started my career in the military as infantryman. I stayed infantry my whole career, 11 Bravo. What I did is I went to Fort Lewis, went to Airborne School. Initially was slated to go to Ranger Battalion. I went to RIP, the Ranger Indoctrination Program. I kind of looked around there, and I decided at that time it wasn't for me. So what I did is I went to 9th Division, which is at that time a straight leg infantry division. They walked. They sent me to Ranger School in about 6 months. They notified me on a Wednesday. I was there on a Monday. Went to Ranger School, graduated Ranger School, came back. We did a little bit of motorized after that. I had dune buggies for 2 years. 9th Division at that time was a test bed for the Army for all the different equipment. What we did is worked that for a couple of years, and then I actually went to the Long Range Surveillance Unit at 9th Division for my last 2 years. From there I went to selection for Special Operations. I knew I wanted to be in Special Operations, I guess, from the start. Infantry was a path to get there. I stayed infantry my whole career. I didn't cross over to any special forces. Or a lot of folks, what they did is when they got into special ops to get promoted faster, they went SF or special forces, went to the Q course. The problem is when they did that, they came back and they never worked on a team. So if they ever went back to special forces after leaving special ops or the unit, what would happen is they didn't have a basis to work on a team, which was, I didn't feel that was right. So I just stayed 11 Bravo infantry my career. Special operations, once I made the selection process, they went and trained me in the skills that I needed to do the job. So they trained me. I learned, once I learned those skill sets, I practiced them for years. I spent 10 years in special operations, started at I call the Gumby level. Worked on an assault team as a breacher, worked my way up the team to an assistant team leader. I spent 2 years as a sniper, then went back and took an assault team for 2 years. Then my last 2 years in special ops, I worked as an instructor in the cadre to bring in new special operations students and train them. Why I went to special ops? I just wanted to serve. I was in a military family surrounding, grew up in San Diego. I try not to tell many people that. I escaped California when I was 18. State's gone communist, but it's okay. You know, we still got a lot of good states out there. So what I did is went into the military. I guess because I was surrounded by military. And I guess in the end game, you want to be the best person you can, best soldier you can. So that was a place I could do it. And so I tested, was selected, trained, felt I did a good job over the years there, and had a certain ideal. I guess probably that's one of my issues is how it should be versus the way it was. And so again, you've got to keep the politics out, and that's probably what caused me the most problems. I'm not into the hua, 3 bags full, the false motivation stuff. It's be a quiet professional, and don't tell me what you did, show me. And there's a lot of people out there right now who will tell you how good they are. I want to see the people that show me how good you are. Performance is where it's at. So I believe in that. When I can't do the job anymore, I walk away. So it was one of those things. I was fortunate to be trained by some phenomenal soldiers. I had some great mentors, had some that weren't so good, but for the most part they set a really good standard and high bar when I went through my initial training. And I tried to carry that through the unit, and I guess the biggest thing was not losing people, because you're going to lose people in the military. I mean, Fort Bragg used to lose more soldiers, on routine in traffic accidents than they did probably combat for a while. And, bases can't go 30 days without a soldier being killed. Sometimes they're actually safer in combat because they don't have all the civilian stuff out there affecting them. But with that, guys are going to get killed. They know what they're in for. The problem is, how you use those lives and how you use, I guess, those resources, American resources. And there's a great responsibility to our political, the State Department, to the military, in being judicious in the use of force and applying our military assets. And don't half-step it. Train them the best that you can, equip them the best you can, and if you need to do combat operations, go in there for a 1-2 knockout punch. Simple as it is. Special operations at the time, special forces was their main mission was what we call FID, Foreign Internal Defense. They'd go into the countries, build the infrastructures of those countries. They'd force multiply, train security forces, and they'd build those up to help work within that country to restructure and rebuild that company, bring them up the country to bring them up to higher levels. You had Rangers, which were direct action. They attack things. Special Forces generally is a little bit older, more mature. When I say 26, 27 Special Forces at the time, Rangers, 19 to 21 mean age group, so young soldiers coming in, first experience with the Army. Two different levels, two different thought processes. One we call direct action, attacking things. The other is foreign internal defense. Sometimes there's a little overlap in Special Forces as far as their missions, but for the most part at the time it was foreign internal defense, which is building countries and infrastructures, winning the hearts and minds, so to speak. So my infantry, it fit both ways. I learned both sides of the house as far as, again, a little bit of foreign internal defense, but also mostly direct action. The Special Operations Group I was assigned to, that's what we did. Our primary mission was to take targets, seize things, go anywhere, do anything, anytime. I guess if I were to sum it up in a nutshell. When I say Special Operations, when I say go anywhere, anytime, do anything, any environment, jungle, Arctic, desert, urban environments, mobility, any infiltration skill. So we maintained a proficiency in infiltration skills and also being able to do that job in different environments, cold weather, hot weather, jungle, urban, sand environments. A lot of skill sets you've got to practice, routinely to keep those skills up to actually be able to execute those missions in those environments. Many different selection processes out there. Special operations that I was assigned to, we look for the individual. The thought process was if they could take an individual, select a strong individual, they could put a bunch of strong individuals together to make a stronger team. What happens is when you do a group selection process of, say, 30 to 40 people, and you look at a group can get a weak individual through. They can pass them through the system. Whereas if you look at the selection process individual, an individual can't hide, and what you can do is evaluate them under individual merits, strengths, weaknesses, and all that. So the selection process I went through, generally 30 days, but you're actually under scrutiny, probation for at least a year, and you're actually taking a couple of years to learn your skill sets. They may get you out of initial training at say a 50 to 75% level. And then when you actually get assigned to a special operations team, what happens is they polish you out. Just your normal day-to-day training, your missions you go on, your training missions, sometimes combat, will actually polish you out to be a well-rounded operator. We went through probably, I think, 122 classes back to back for my class. Probably out of those two classes of 120 people each, we selected 16 people. Out of the 16 that actually went through the training course, probably 12 to 14 made it. So I don't know, you can figure out and these are not green people. These are people who've been seasoned in the military, have the skill sets. So that's kind of the numbers we came up with. Now, you could also go as far as how long do those people last? Well, out of that group that starts, you may trip one or two in the first year. They may give them the chance to go try to prove themselves, and what happens is they don't work out, so they go back to the regular Army. Great soldiers, but at one point, sometimes they give them the chance to excel. Now, as far as Special Forces, Rangers, I couldn't tell you. The selection process is constantly changing. Special Forces is instituted a SFAS, a Special Forces Assessment course prior to going to the actual Q course or qualification course. So what they're trying to do is pre-screen folks to keep them out of that 6-month, year-long course to make sure that they successfully complete it. Rangers, they'll do a pre-ranger, sometimes a RIP before they go to ranger schools to get them up to snuff because of the high washout rates, to make sure they don't waste a slot on somebody. So it's one of those things, and then it's all in flux. I've heard now rumors that they're going to put women in ranger school. Well, to do that, they're going to have to lower the overall standards, which means they're going to have to lower the entrance standards, the physical standards, or they're going to have 2 standards, which is, to me, unacceptable. Combat, there should be 1 standard. So these selection processes are constantly being revised, evaluated, refined, and so it's a constant process to try to get the best applicant out on the first shot. They can figure out a bandwidth generally from history if they look at their classes. A guy that comes in, if he can do this much physical, his mental's in this certain capacity, all that, they can usually figure out before they even get there that this guy's got the highest chance to make it through the process. Barring an injury or something like that. Some people come in that are phenomenal people, and what happens is they're pre-injured before they come in, and they re-injure themselves during the selection process, and they can't rehab. So there's a lot of people that have had jump injuries, knee injuries, all that don't make it through because of those injuries. So there's a lot of variables there. Weather during your selection course. You could have one that's very cold. You can have one that's very hot. You can have one with snow. That's going to have a mental, physical impact on the student going through the selection process. When you start mixing different special operations assets out there can be some different factors. Special forces, if it's FID, foreign internal defense, that's their mindset. Then you have Rangers, which is direct action. Those two different complete mindsets. One is to attack things, one is to build infrastructure to show them how to actually train soldiers. Then you have other groups within special operations that have different missions. So a lot of it's a chain of command. You also have maturity levels. You have, again, special forces, or the group I was in, 27 to 30 was almost, maybe a start factor for maturity level experience in the military. Whereas you mix them with Rangers, and then now you have a 17 to 21 mean age group. The other issue you've got is when sometimes guys will go back and give back. Say we train folks in special operations, the Rangers. What they'll do is they'll do a stint special operations, then they'll go back and actually lead in, say, the Rangers, where they came from, to give back to that community. That's a great thing to do. That way they can keep them in a certain training bandwidth, maturity level. They know what those guys need to be training on, focused in. Same thing with special forces. They can go back, if they've worked in special ops in the unit I was in, they can go back to special forces and give back to those guys, try to be an asset on a team. But again, I think it's easier probably to go back to the Rangers than it is to special forces, because special forces is, again, depending on their missions. They have certain components that are direct action, but for the most part, it's building infrastructures and teaching. The team I had over there was actually myself, 3 others. I had another team member come. He was, we'll say, in a school, and he came over, didn't have room on my Little Bird for him, so I put him with a sister team. So he worked with a sister team on all the missions, whereas my folks, myself and 3 others, I had what they call assistant team leader and 2 other individuals on my team, phenomenal guys. I actually inherited the team. When I say inherited, I was working on a sniper team as an assistant team leader. The team leader for that team, which is my old assault team, he was in a parachute accident and was killed. And so what ended up happening is I went back and took that team not too long before this. With that, all the guys, some of them I worked with before, some I hadn't. So what I did is it's easier for me to adjust to their standard operating procedures, their tactics and techniques, than for me to try and change everything. So I said, show me what you do, I'll learn how to do that. It's easier for me as one person to do that. So that's what I did. I don't want to say I took the weak link as my battle buddy. I took somebody that was newer, and I made him my battle buddy or partner during the operation. He was right next to me. That way I could work with him, mentor him. Phenomenal. All of them were top-notch soldiers. Phenomenal guys. I can't say enough good things. All of them did incredible during the battle. Went out multiple times, pulled people out of the street back to safe positions. Held their positions, single positions, all night. Just can't say enough good things about the guys. Special Forces medic that was with us in our section, our area, great guy too. I worked with him for years. He did phenomenal stuff. When he lost his patient, the one soldier died, he found work. When I said he found work, we were low on water, so we took our canteens. We kept a hard 1-quart and then water purification tabs, and he would fill them up out of an old rain barrel, and keep everybody hydrated. One of my guys got a little dehydrated, so he plugged an IV into him in the middle of the night, got him back up, got a bag of juice into him. But as far as the assets that we work, it was just like another training day. They just did phenomenal, exceptional. I can't say enough good things about the guys. I could take and I could go that, and they know where to go. We had our SOP, it was all nonverbal, and so you can work to that level. Generally, you keep the continuity when you work with a team, and with the team, generally 4 to 6 people. Also larger groups if you're tasked with that, or smaller groups. It could be 1 to 2. What you want to do, though, is you want to be an asset to the team. So you learn all the baseline skills when you come in. Learn your job as best as you can. Don't look up. Don't try to make rank. The faster you make rank, the actually work yourself out of a job. What you want to do is stay in the trenches, hands-on as long as you can. So we used to actually, one technique was to jump ship, go be a sniper for a couple of years, come back, work a team leader. Because once you became a team leader, your clock is running. You got a couple of years in that job, then you go to other jobs because the burnout rate, the ops tempo, so to speak, very high. And generally, you get a couple of years, get seasoned, then you want to give those skills back to newer people. So, good thought process is take the team leaders that are fresh from the field, from the work, the fight, and have them teach the new students. That way a new student is seeing somebody who's just been there, and they can actually articulate all the things and bring that student up to a higher level faster, because you've got a guy fresh from doing the job, not a dated person, so to speak. As far as the us and them relationship, I don't see it. It's up to, one, the chain of command, two, the maturity of the individuals. A soldier's a soldier, and that's the way I looked at it. I stayed infantry, so I had a common bond. A lot of it is the leadership, the arrogance that causes problems, and us and them. You can't have an us and them. We all bleed the same. So what you want to do is take these young soldiers, if you can, bring them up to the highest level possible, because we're going to combat. This is where people die. It's not a social experiment. It's not an ego trip. What you want to do is train these soldiers, get them up in sometimes a short amount of time, 30 days, to where they need to be to face combat operations. Technically, before that day, we had 2 months together to work together to polish out all the actions that would happen. Best case scenario, worst case scenario. So what ended up happening is we worked again a month in the United States prepping, doing rehearsals, and then we actually did work overseas there in country. So we should have been developing, refining SOPs all the way through. The problem, there was an us and them relationship, not at ground level with the soldiers, but change of command. You almost had a rogue captain with the Rangers, arrogant, and just he wanted to do things his own way. And he worked for us. That's the bottom line. We didn't go there. He came to us. Our chain of command didn't reel him in. One time during an after-action rehearsal, he didn't like the ability of an E7 team leader to be able to tell problems that we saw, things that happened. I think he believed it should all be officers. Well, the problem is those officers don't have a lot of experience. We had done hits, prior missions, a lot of experience, depth of experience in our, and we knew what we were doing. We wanted things fixed. A lot of times we'd watch, say, a rehearsal, and we're still doing our actions on the objective, on the target. We're glancing at blocking positions, and what they're doing is they're watching us instead of practicing their individual skills, SOPs. So when you do that, what happens is they're not refining the worst case scenario. We're always looking, okay, if this happens, what do we do? If that happens, what do we do? Contingency plans. Well, the problem is they're watching us. Well, if they're watching us, they're not developing their own SOPs and tactics for problems they're going to have, which could be anything from injuries, heavy weapons coming in, things like that. So when it went bad, long story short, one time we brought up some points. Captain Steele said, you mind your business, we'll mind ours. And our chain of command should have snatched him up by his stack and swivel and escorted him off the compound. That's where our chain of command was weak. This captain worked for us. We established that he worked for us from day one. What happens is when we went to ground over there, they worked for us. They were a support element, simple as it is. When he says the problem is during the combat action, his position, I think Mark wrote in the book about two of our guys tried to push forward, link up with our command, and they're driven back by heavy gunfire, and he laughed at them as a that's not acceptable. That man, he should have been brought up on UCMJ and again put out of the military. But the problem with special ops doesn't like to say they have a problem. And what happens is they'll cover up problems. The other thing they'll do is sometimes officers have other, we'll call it a godfather in the military or a sugar daddy, and you get like a 3-star general, and what they'll do is protect them. No matter how much they screw up, and they'll protect them, and they'll bring them up the chain of command. That's not acceptable. You still need to counsel people, whether it be enlisted rank, NCO rank, or officer rank. That wasn't getting done. The convoy commander was the Ranger battalion commander. He, as far as I see, didn't counsel him. didn't bring them, didn't check to make sure that the individual soldiers are doing their jobs. So there's a lot of disconnect there, especially when you put a lieutenant in charge. Lieutenants don't know anything. They don't know anything about the tactical skills, SOPs. They're very fresh in the Army. They're learning as they go. Well, combat is not the place to do it on combat ops. All right, when we got into the country, you have to start from ground zero a lot of times in your living conditions, and you're always improving your living conditions. In this case, there was an old Russian hangar. The doors were frozen open in one position, and we moved in there with cots, and what you had, probably a cot the same size as this table, and that's what you owned for your space for 2 to 3 months. What you had is the cot and the room underneath it. The hangar, they're dirty, filthy. They've got pigeons, they've been crapping all over. And what you have to do is progressively make your life a little bit better. So you move in this area, and it's a big open space. And what you do is you may have special ops guys on one side, rangers on another. You cannot see a line between the two groups. We live all together. And so what ends up happening is you end up cleaning up your area every day. You move debris, you clean it. The guys themselves do it. They create living space move junk, move it to other areas. You help transport it. You have to have hygienic conditions, because that's the first thing you can put down a fighting force. If they get some kind of dysentery or water poisoning, food poisoning, it can put down a force quicker than combat. So you're constantly improving your living conditions. We start with the water. You got to drink bottled water. In this case, water was a very valuable commodity. You can desal or process water from the ocean, and what ends up happening is you don't let it run in the shower. You don't let it run when you're doing your toothbrush or you're shaving. You take you get your face wet, lather up, shave, rinse it off. The water doesn't run in excess. When your uniform, you need to wash it. You wash it in a mop bucket. What happens is when you can't stand the salt stains anymore, you go ahead and wash it. You hang it on the ends of your cot. That's your drying line. And you may last 2 days, 3 days. You just, it depends on, your conditions. You get salt stains in your cot. You're eating canned food for the time, most of the time. It's, the safest, keeps you, from eating. We haven't developed the antibodies yet to all the bugs overseas. So again, you get to where you get the squirts and throwing up, vomiting all at one session one time where you're combat ineffective. You realize you got to take better care of yourself. So hangars are getting constantly cleaned, renovated. Your living space, you've got what you own here. You may have a fly swatter, some bug spray. You're drinking bottled water. You're going to take your gear off, your combat gear, and you're going to put it in a small pile at the end of your bunk. You're going to take it off in reverse order. I want to be able to get dressed in a minute and a half or less, because I can react that fast, but you just have to take it off in reverse order. All right, somewhat fitting that we're talking about Somalia, Memorial Day. By the time this is produced, it'll probably be 20 years since I was involved in the Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia, the Battle of the Black Sea. At the time, a lot of things going on in the world. President Bush Sr. was in charge of our country, great leader, a lot of depth of experience, military experience, combat experience, World War II. But he had two major dilemmas to think about at the time. He had one, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the wars in the Balkans, and then we had Somalia. Somalia, the immediate legitimate warlords starving their fellow clans. The head warlord Aidid and the clan, Habergetten clan, had been hijacking food shipments. What they would do is starve their fellow clans, use that food as a weapon, also use it to go into neighboring countries, buy drugs, arms, ammunitions. And so this civil war that was there, people were dying. The media, again, I don't want to say hyped it up, but they took a special interest in it. Something needed to be done. So the President Bush at the time had two solutions. He could either become involved in Somalia or the Balkans. He chose Somalia. He said, we can send the Marines in, we can open up the main supply routes, we can protect the food shipments, we can get people fed, and we can make a difference there. And that started an escalation that I don't know if folks were really ready for or not in this country. A lot of times the media pushes us to take an action but they forget that these actions generally come in a force option involving the military. Sometimes you've got to go in and make the peace before you keep the peace, and that generally takes putting bodies on the floor to do it. We sent the Marines in there to actually, get it squared away. The UN's there, but you got to understand the UN, not everybody in the UN has a fighting ethic. Sometimes people join the UN just for the money, for the training, but their heart's not really into it. We had multiple bases in the country, one at the airport, a couple outlying, and so the UN there, different people have a fighting ethic. Pakistanis, for example, their idea maybe at the time of an offense would be to drive out of their compound around the block and back into their compound. So they weren't really a fighting force. They were there physically, but not a real asset. America is the UN. We are the enforcement arm of the UN. We make things happen. We bring security. We bring peace. We bring the medical, the food, supplies, all that. We are the UN, in effect. If we want it to happen, we make it happen. We've got to lift platforms, the ships, the airlift to get things done. We've got the security people, the armored vehicles. And in the end, you've got to make the peace before you keep the peace. Well, what that takes, a lot of times Americans don't realize it, is we've got to put bodies on the floor. In that case, they're fighting each other. As far as the Somalis in country, different speculation. They would get on the drug cot and in the afternoon and basically lay up. But there are different schools of thought. You really don't know their lifestyle unless you're living with them. But I can foresee that happening. They got a daily ritual of the cot, the drug. Again, maybe that's why they're tougher. But I think in the end, they were a people that had a harsh living. Only the scrappers, the fighters survived until old age. What ended up happening is, they fought from, everything, disease, starvation, water, health conditions from when they started, their childhood all the way up. So by the time they made adults, they've had a harsh lifestyle. And so with that, they carry that lifestyle into combat. I mean, they were good, tenacious fighters. We'd probably trained them before, as our special forces has done it. I can't pinpoint that if we have, but we've done it before. We've had to go back and fight people that we've trained. So a lot of times they don't retain the information. It's handed over different generations, but they have the tenacity to go forward. They have the tenacity to shoot at you. They're no longer afraid of you. It's one of those things that it's a cultural almost. What ended up happening is, as we started to escalate, they started to escalate. And instead of fighting each other, they started fighting us. What happened at one point, Pakistanis got ambushed. 24 soldiers were killed. Women came out. It's like a family affair over there, chopped up, wounded, and dead. And that started escalating the tensions in the country. So we're looking at that. We're watching CNN. Things are developing. As it escalated, when the Somalis had a meeting with other leaders in this one house to try to calm things. Somebody had the bright idea to hit this house, and they used TOW missiles and killed, I think, 70-plus leaders of their country, all having this meeting. Well, what that did, in effect, is kept them from fighting each other. Now they're mad at the U.S. Mad is an understatement. We've killed 73 leaders of their country. They go out and they kill 4 journalists. Well, what happens is the media pulls all their journalists out of the country. They don't want their good journalists killed. So the only journalists left in country to report are the ones that are loyal to the bad guys, SNA, Somali National Alliance. So what happens is we didn't protect journalists in that day. They're not allowed on military bases, so they had to live on the economy, which means if they put a bad story in, the people there in the country could track them right down on the economy and kill them. What happens is you had a certain generation of journalists at that point that almost actually worked for the bad guys. They report favorably about the bad guys and wouldn't get the stories right. And that was the only media at that point that reports we were getting out of that country. It was one-sided. I've even seen where the media, we had letters that we put up on the TOC, or the Tactical Operations Center wall, of the media encouraging the Somalis to fight us because they had us on the ropes. And they actually sometimes played the ends against the middle for a story. Unfortunately, that was the media at that time. Again, we didn't protect the media. They were kind of on their own. I wrote my thesis on media distancing in the military for my graduate degree, and basically delved into a lot of that. And there's some good media out there, but there's also a lot of media in it for a business. And what happens is a job is how you feed your family. A profession is how you feed your soul, so to speak. So there's a difference out there. There's a few good journalists, but they're few and far between. what happened is when the Pakistani massacre happened, and then we retaliated. Journalists were killed. So what happened is somebody decided to push in I guess you'd call it a SWAT team at the military level to solve problems. I guess the concept was to take out Aidid. The problem was there was no government in exile. There was no strategic, economic, political interest in that country. What we did is we went in with no end game. We weren't training the locals. We didn't have governments ready to put in power. Had we captured Aidid or taken out his infrastructure, it was a standalone component, probably in the military, and I can't put my finger on it because what happens is after the fact, everybody runs for cover. So what happens is we get sent in to do a job. Well, there's no intelligence network set up. You're starting everything from ground zero there. When we go in country, we're in there. We actually begin our rehearsals back at Bragg a month earlier. We bring all our assets together. We start practicing for what we foresee our missions are going to be in that country. And we want to take out Aidid, take out his infrastructure. The problem is when we do that, it's going to be a vacuum. Special Forces is not in their training. We don't have any forward plans past that. There's no end game. And again, going back, it's a standalone operation. And I think it's caused the military to rethink their operations. It's got to be a combined effort when we go into a country. It can't be just one component, say the military, going in and doing their thing. What happened, you had a transition of presidents at the time. President Bush left, President Clinton took over. Well, President Clinton's background, there is no military background. He didn't know how to use the military. So you've got a political problem right there. A president, and unfortunately, it generally goes along party lines. Democrats don't like to use the military, don't understand the military. Republicans do. What happens is a Republican president will build up the military. A Democratic president will inherit that military, their capabilities, limitations, just like Osama right now. That was a Bush military that was stood up. President Obama is reaping the benefits of that military. But what will happen, it'll be a slow decline generally during a Democratic presidency of the military. And I would say everything from morals to ethics to capabilities, and that's a problem. So it needs to be one level as far as the military. Whether you're Democratic or Republican, you need to have one military, a cutting-edge military. Why? Because those young men and women that join the military, that is our most precious commodity out there. A person that volunteers in the military, a volunteer military, to keep our interests safe, protect our country from enemies, foreign and domestic. Most other countries have to tell their people to do that. We have people that actually do that on their own right now. So we have a duty and obligation to protect those young soldiers, men, women of all the services. All right, well, we're in country. What we're doing is we get deployed to the country and we've got to do a whole setup, and what we've got to do is look at the country, the infrastructure, what we're up against from inside that country. There's a lot of changes going on, and I shouldn't say changes. We're adapting to the different environmental conditions, everything from the weather to the water to the food to combat conditions, because you don't know. We're getting mortared. We got mortared 6 to 8 times in country. We didn't know when mortars going to come in, when one's going to come through the hangar. Your sleep patterns change. There's a lot of things going on. Now we're on a UN base. The base we're on, we've got UN forces. Some are favorable to the UN, some are in the UN just to pull money. Italians, for example, every time we launch, they would signal somebody out on the economy, when I say the economy, Somalis, that we were launching. So they weren't in favor of us. You could almost say traitors to the UN. But the problem was nobody would take action. The UN at that point was, useless. I don't want to say useless. They were there. They were not offensive. They weren't going out. They didn't own any property. They were working a defensive posture on the base. They were getting hit, not retaliating, not what they understood. Somalis have grown up, since they're young with an AK in their hand. They understand getting shot or dead, and that's about it. People say, yeah, you can't look at it that way. Yeah, you can. It's a whole different mindset. We live in a fantasy land called America. It's not like overseas. Kids are on the small end of the food chain over there. We protect our kids. I've seen them sacrifice their kids. They can make more kids. That's the philosophy. So over there, that Somali culture, you've got the UN culture, you've got Italians, you've got Russians, Romanians, all the different folks working on a base. They're not really there for combat. They're there, I hate to say it a lot of times, just for the money. I hate to say it. UN supplies, equipment, training, all that. So there's no proactive, aggressive posture. It's sit back, be defensive. Well, when Americans come in, we're pretty much aggressive. We take the fight to the bad guys. We push. We own territory. We keep people honest out there. So that's the difference. Now the problem with the Italians, they've got economic, political interests that go back probably 1900s, 1800s in that country. So they're playing both sides of it. They're playing the UN side plus their own internal politics side. And when you start signaling when other forces go out, you're, I hate to say it, a traitor to the cause. And they need to be held accountable for that. Nobody ever did that. We knew they were doing it. We could see them when they do that. You could see when he took off. The problem is they're there on the base. So you got this big struggle now with the UN trying to work with the United Nations in Somalia. Then you've got U.S. forces, all these, how they're meshing, and politics. And that's an issue. But again, there's only so many bases to operate out of. If the UN's there, the UN's there. You got to look at their posture, alert posture. A lot of things we couldn't do with the UN. I mean, every time you shot, if we wanted to have a range, they think they're getting attacked and they'd overamp. We had a soldier one time, a shark actually rode over the reef, bit a soldier that was swimming. And they took him to the wrong hospital, took him to one of the UN hospitals. Well, they basically killed him, because their medical experience is not up to our standard. Things like that happen over there. And again, so then they had to come up with SOPs. Americans go to American facilities, medical facilities. So a lot of things you never hear about that happen. They never hear about why they happen, but they happen. What happens is the media, they go through different stages. Again, they may or may not know. We don't work with the media well a lot of times in the military. There's reasons we should, because again, American people need to know what their soldiers are doing overseas. It kind of keeps both sides honest. If the media doesn't know what they're doing, they'll sometimes report erroneously the story, whereas we had intended, for example, we hit a UN compound one time. Well, the UN compound was dirty, so we went ahead and took it, scarfed everybody up off the compound, and made our presence known in town. It was a deliberate hit. People are calling it a debacle, a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Unfortunately, we had to hit it. It was dirty, and so people don't like to call a spade out there. So, yep, the UN has problems sometimes. People can put a UN flag on any building and say it's UN. Well, it's not. It can be a cover. So different people look at this battle, Somalia, as a debacle. All the missions were accomplished that day on 3-4 October. We went in, city, over 1 million people, against overwhelming odds. We secured the people we wanted to secure. A helicopter was shot down. We knew one was going to get shot down eventually. We secured it overnight, brought all our dead and wounded out. We got ready to come back out and do combat operations. Everything from our perspective was accomplished that we set out to do. The problem was the backlash from the American people. Once they saw American bodies being drugged, they didn't know how to react. And the president at the time was political. He says, okay, stop operations. Let's get the State Department involved, Robert Oakley. Let's start negotiations where maybe we should have hit him again. But there was no end game to this. There wasn't a working with the State Department and the military. It was two separate entities. But the president, in the end, we work for the president, the military does, and the people of America. So he'll make the call. And he can either short leash you, I guess, put you on a leash, or he can say, continue on. And again, the president said, stop what you're doing. And so we stopped. Our unit commander, good guy, but he probably missed his calling as a chaplain. He was one of the first officers. I think he had a problem with religion and having to kill people. And that unit, their mission, we try to be as surgical as possible, but the end game is to kill people more efficiently than anyone else in the world. If you take it to that level, you can do any mission. We try to solve everything through peaceful efforts if we can. Be smart first, not get in a fight if we can avoid it. But the problem is there's times where you've got to fight. Now what ended up happening is there's some religious issues that I don't think he could resolve. One instance comes to mind, and we knew it was coming. Otto's capture, nothing like in the movie. Otto, very surgical hit, took him out, very violent, very fast, rapid hit. It was in a bad neighborhood, took a lot of gunfire. Didn't put Rangers on the ground. I remember not even shooting because I couldn't identify my targets, and I thought there were Rangers in between us, so I didn't want any fratricide to go. So we actually moved a lot of times across streets under fire because we didn't suppress, because we thought they were friendlies there. So we captured Otto, exfilled them out. We were getting shot at on exfil. Couldn't ID targets, didn't put any bullets. Snipers that day probably killed, between the little birds and snipers, 20 bad guys who were trying to attack us. Great mission, very incredible mission. We came back and we went into the debrief area. Guys are high-fiving because nobody's hurt, everybody's clean, we got our target. And he made the statement of, you guys need to settle down. There's some families out there without their loved ones, talking about the bad guys. And we kind of just looked at each other and went, this ain't good. When you care more for the people there that are trying to kill you, you haven't rectified your religious versus military duties and obligations. Now he's a good man, but he didn't need to be there. And nobody during his whole career ever counseled him on it, to my belief or knowledge, and reoriented his career into a more useful area. Now, and that's part of the problem with special ops. They don't like to do that. They don't like to admit they have mistakes. Well, that was an issue. So what happens is, if you worry about, we talk about collateral damage and hitting, how hard you hit somebody. When you go in there and you get in a fight, and these guys have been fighting their whole career, what they understand is either getting shot or getting killed, and that's it. When you send bodies back either dead or wounded, they understand that these don't mess with these people, and you've got to do that sometimes. You've got to, when you go into a fight, you do a 1-2 knockout punch, or you go for the jugular, and you simple as it is. I don't think he could comprehend how many people we actually killed that day, and then we're not going to roll over. We don't go into an area. They keep pushing us, we'll keep turning the handle on the meat grinder, and that's what we did. He wrote a book called Never Surrender, and if you read Otto's capture, I think he watched the movie. It's not correct. I was on that hit. Put hands on the man. It was one of those things that don't know why he wrote it. I think his religious beliefs sometimes interfere, overlap, and he hasn't figured out a way to deconflict them at this point. Good man, but again, he probably would have been better served as a chaplain versus a military leader. Other missions I'll talk about in general terms, but we've made the mistake in other theaters before of putting a reward out for somebody, announcing it. Saber rattling is what I call it. Well, all it does is take a guy now that we can usually track or see, and he puts him underground. He knows he's on a target list, so to speak. So we've done that in other countries before, and they did it again here. Like they're going to really scare this guy. They don't. They go underground, and it makes it harder for special operations soldiers to get him. And that's happened there too. Other missions were conducted, and once we couldn't find Aidid, then we started dismantling his infrastructure, his bosses, his colonels, the folks that actually ran his. Osman Otto was his finance minister. That's why we scarfed him up, took him out. So we started dismantling his, now, but he still had the war fighters, and that was the problem. The people on the ground with guns, the intel was, there's 100 hardcore Somalis. We knew that was fake. Intel generally works, but the best thing Intel provides you is weather, and sometimes a little bit of news. But what ends up happening there is one mission, probably 20 Somalis were killed, the bad guys. And we came back and said, okay, that means there's 80 left. Well, realistically, we found on 3-4 October there were thousands. And Intel hadn't, but we knew it was coming from our level, but the Intel couldn't pinpoint numbers. And so there was still a base out there. Even though we're taking out his upper infrastructure, there was a base of fighters out there and people that were loyal to him that would fight, if not for their clan, for their own survival of their clan. So who has the biggest stick in the gun? Most guns basically rules that section or that area. Aidid's clan, had the guns, munitions, the drug trade, and so they ran it and they controlled the food, initially until the Marines came in there and took it back. Mogadishu itself, what you've got is different clans there. Again, you might have one area that's friendly to the U.S., one area that's not. You've got to know those areas generally. It might be a street dividing line, a green zone, so to speak, where you cross one street, you're in another clan. In one street, this clan likes you, the other clan will try and kill you. So you've got to know those areas. Again, we didn't help when we killed all the leaders of their country. I think it eventually wore off a little bit, and there were some clans that liked us. But again, you had to know, so your helicopter shot down your vehicle, which way to go to find a friendly clan. You don't want to run into the wrong area where everybody doesn't like you. So that's as far as the clans go. When I talk about Mad Max, I think of streets, dirt, dust, the wire. Most of the wires are down, probably 90% of the wires, no electricity. You'll have, when you fly around at night, you'll see some generators on some of the people that are wealthy and well-to-do in that country. The rest of it is dark. The wires, when I say they stripped all the wires off the telephone lines, phone lines, they sell it for scrap. Burn the coating off, sell it as metal. The streets, dirt, dust, if they were once asphalt, they got a good coat of dust or dirt on it. So wherever you land or drive, there is a dust signature. I saw the movie. It was kind of surreal in the fact that all the people, I didn't see that many people all at one time. Once in a while, they might have crowds gathering at we'll call them the grandstands, where everybody go listen to a political speaker. But that, for the most part, that was an isolated grouping. We might have several thousand in one spot. For the rest of the time, I never saw that many lumped together. So you had shanty towns, just like a poor area, a project, so to speak, tin huts, tin roofs. You don't want to go in that area because the helicopter rotor washed, roofs come off. They know the area, you don't. Bullets go right through the sheds. And you've got an uptown, which you might have a courtyard, a block or half a block, high walls, and 3 or 4 houses in that courtyard. That might be well-to-do. Or you might have a simple small courtyard in a block with a house inside that courtyard, walls 8 to 10 feet high that you have to penetrate. But it's either well-to-do, it looked like, or poor. Simple as it is. Have and have-nots. As the time went on, different things happened. We were mortared 6 to 8 times during that time. Part of the reason for that was the hangar doors were frozen open. So it actually faced uphill into downtown Mogadishu. They could look in and see your alert posture day or night. So sometimes mortar nets would go active and they'd mortar us. What we'd have to do is turn all the lights out, go dormant or dark. Mortars would come in, we'd do an assessment, look for everybody, get accountability, make sure nobody's out, say in a porta potty and get hit by a mortar, stray mortar. We'd have to go through that, and that weighed on a lot of folks. What ended up happening, because we didn't control the mortar net initially, we didn't kill those mortar crews. What happened is there's a term called force protection. You either protect yourself or somebody else protects your force. Initially, we were not allowed to protect ourselves. We were relying on 10th Mountain. And sometimes it would be 5 hours before they come out. Well, a mortar crew can get set up, they can launch mortars and be gone. They're not scared of somebody shooting up an open field 5 hours later. What we need to do is we end up putting up our own force protection later, and they would take care of those crews when we could. But you never knew when one mortar is going to come in through the thin skin of the hangar, and would it blow up on top? Would it come down, hit the ground, and blow up? So eventually, there's times remember guys went to sleep with their body armor laying over the top of them because they didn't know if a mortar was going to come in. At one point, I know one team at least built a small mortar bunker around their sleeping area, just worried about that, because you don't want to go through all these operations and then there's that one lucky round comes in and kill you, or you never wake up. So there was always, you never get a good sleep overseas in a combat environment. What happens is your sleep's degrading, your food's degrading, you're acclimating to that area, the indigenous personnel, the combat conditions. It's a subtle stress that builds in a soldier. So the conditions, we tried to improve them as best we could, but again, there's always that constant threat. And we'll talk about it later that one mortar did come in and landed right in the middle of a command group after 3-4 October and took out a whole bunch of good people, killed Matt Rierson. But again, we knew it was a constant threat, but you've got to put those guys down. That's what force protection is all about. You've got to go ahead, hit them, and let them know there's somebody new in town, and when you put bodies on the floor, they understand that over there. Some people say that's too aggressive. Nope, it's not. That's what the Indians understand. That's their way of life. That's their culture. So we can do that. But again, you've got to have the political will to do that with the chain of command, because again, you're doing different layers of chains of command. You've got the special operations, you've got the UN chain of command. Sometimes it gets blurred with State Department coming in. You get different what they call rules of engagement, when you can actually shoot people and engage people. So we're constantly fortifying in the hangar, protecting the birds, building sandbag bunkers around birds in our spare time to protect the birds, because if your wagon or your chariot gets disabled, you can't get there, can't get to your target. Discrepancies between the book, the movie. They show in the movie preparing for a mission. When you get in country, you're ready. Day one, first footstep to do, take care of business. Your gear's already prepped. What you always do is you refine your gear. So we had incidents and planning. In the movie, likes to depict the generals giving all the information and planning. It wouldn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. General, great guy. He knows so much about special operations, but the guys on the ground actually plan it from the ground level up. Team leaders plan it. That's what's critical. If I'm going into a specific area, I plan that area because it's my life on the line. General doesn't have a clue about that area. What I'll do is, along with the other team leaders, we'll plan that, and we'll go ahead and execute that. So we'll have primary breach points, alternate breach points. So what ends up happening is the planning was not done like the movie shows. So again, it was done bottom level up. At the team leader level, we had unlimited time to plan. Sometimes we pre-plan targets, potential targets. We were always finding work. The movie portrayed setting up gear only when they were assigned a mission. No, your gear was set up the whole time. You were constantly checking your gear, double checking, making sure equipment, you don't want an equipment failure. So you would have, you would check it, double check it, clean it constantly. For our weapons, for example, if I want to clean my weapons to make sure they're up, after one helicopter dusting on one practice, we have to clean weapons because you get a 140-mile-an-hour sandstorm blowing stuff into your weapons. Well, how we do that is we go through all our gear again, clean it, dump it out. I take the rifle, I take a ammo can, a bigger ammo can, put half diesel, half gas. I'd clean my whole weapon. I have to clean my rifle, my pistol, my shotgun, and get it back and then for the next mission. Even if the mission didn't go and it was a practice mission, you had to clean all your gear. So it was a constant chore keeping your gear, and you had extra sets of gear. So if I came off a mission and I broke something or lost something, I might grab another piece, put it automatically back in, and I was ready to go back out again. So gear and equipment, it was a constant battle to keep it up and serviceable. It's not like you did all this right before a mission. It was already ready. We had to be able to respond on a moment's notice and then take care of business. All right, the aviation assets for the Task Force 160 at Fort Campbell, 160th. The most incredible people, pilots I've ever seen work with, had unlimited trust in them. It's one of those folks that'll get you on target. They know if there's dangers, when they exfil and your exfil under fire, that it's going to be a smooth ride. They're not going to get shook. I've seen them do incredible things on the plane. They know for sometimes we'd unhook it 1 minute out and it'd be a smooth ride in, and they're getting shot at, still be a smooth ride out. Incredible what these folks did. Okay, we had the ultimate latitude as far as bottom level planning. The team leaders would plan up, and we'd actually direct where we want the other assets. The operational people, we drive the plan. What's the best solution to solve the problem? What happens there is we dictate where everyone else goes to best support us. And there's got to be that, the support relationship. We trust them, respect them. We also have to tell you, here's the best position I need you to do business. And so we had the luxury to do that. Some people may not have liked it, but that's the way it is. For efficiency, we got very efficient in planning and then executing the missions in a rapid manner. The intel came in, we had to act upon it, or stand by to act on it. So we had a system down where we could act and react in a very rapid manner, and then be boots on target or taken in the door to take care of business. So I don't want to get into too much operational, but I want to, again, it was done, it was streamlined, very efficient. As far as police have a certain protocol when they're SWAT teams hitting a target, we have the same protocols. It's the same mission, just we just do it overseas. So there's a mission protocol profile. It can change from environment to environment, but we had refined it so much in our rehearsals in the time prior through just constant planning and prep that we had a good system down. All right, the Special Operations Forces, when we prep and deploy, you've got your whole package working as a unit. You've got we'll call them the direct action guys, the special operations personnel that are going to take that target down. You've got the support people on the outside that are going to contain the target. You've got other special operations assets from sister services that have been integrated into your package. You've got the pilots, key. The pilots, can't say enough good things about them. They're the premier pilots of the world. They kept our butts out of a sling, saved us numerous times, had the utmost ability, where the regular Army measures in yards and meters, they measure in inches. The capability is I've never seen anything like it. The work ethic, the combat ethic. They had pilots with such experience that had 2,000 combat hours in Vietnam, and they bring that depth of experience into the missions. Phenomenal people. They'd come in if you call them, so you had to be very judicious on calling them, because what would happen is, if they didn't have a good survival rate, they'd still come. But I wasn't going to kill a pilot over infiltration that wasn't acceptable if we needed them. So you had to be very judicious on calling those folks, because they would come. It didn't matter. Can't say enough good things about those folks. Just phenomenal. They would do gun runs. You could touch a building right here, and they would do a gun run on that building. That's how accurate and surgical they were. And we had a trust built up. Whereas the regular Army, you had to be careful about how close you called them in on fire support, because you didn't know their capabilities, limitations. Working with these special ops folks, everybody knew their capabilities, limitations, what you could get away with. Incredible assets out there. Rehearsals are practice, and when I say practice, it's practicing everything. You've got move it to your breach points, hallways, T-intersections, close quarter battle, medical, how you work on vehicles, all the immediate action drills on vehicles, which means helicopters, wheeled vehicles, your Humvees, all your actions as the vehicle goes down, if you deploy under fire, if you're hit while moving, all the different contingencies you've got to practice, so it's a constant state. What ends up happening in rehearsals is everybody thinks we have all this special gear. And a lot of times in that day, we'd ask for gear for 4 years before. For example, night vision goggles. So they ended up giving the night vision goggles. We were actually mounting brackets in the hangar overseas and fixing them so they work on our helmets. We didn't get them in time. We didn't get an overabundance of them, which means you want a little bit more in case they get broken or damaged or lost. So if we had the night vision goggles, we were practicing with them on the rehearsals to make sure they worked. You don't want to take a new piece of gear into combat for the first time and figure out whether it works or not. So you use it during rehearsals. We rehearse sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a day, working the actual missions, the different variables to the mission. And with that, you want to integrate this new gear you're getting, which we'd asked for years, and what happens is they finally give it to you now like a week prior. That's too soon. You don't know the building night vision goggles, they didn't have the hard cases back then. You've got to be able to carry them in a daytime op. If we broke them in a daytime op, we didn't have them for a nighttime. We knew how physical and demanding the missions would be, so again, that's why we left those night vision goggles on a daytime op. If I had broke them, I wouldn't have a replacement pair. I'd have to take one from one of my guys. I don't like doing that. So we practice with, for example, got a new shotgun breaching. We can breach doors to get in, breach doors to get out. We can destroy equipment with shotguns. In the photo, I've got one mounted underneath my AR-15, so my equipment list or loadout that I had to work with and get integrated in fluid and daytime, nighttime missions, rifle, shotgun, pistol, extra magazines, 6 to 8 rifle magazines, radio equipment, your helmets, your body armor. Body armor I wore the same piece for 10 years. We didn't get new pieces. Actually, the plates back then, the ceramic plates that actually stopped bullets, the weight was so heavy that it cut your mobility. Like a doctor would like to dress you up like a tank and have you go, but you can't move. You can only put so much water into your body. When you go into an environment like that, what happens is a vest is a heat capacitor and it causes you to sweat. Once you get so degraded with the water, you can't put that in. The only way to get back in your body is an IV. So you had to balance the weight in your fighting loadout. Back then I was about 228 pounds. My combat load, this is just my vest and all my gear, was 310. I had to move that around the city. I had to be able to move it around. So we're always looking for ways to shortcut, lighten your gear. We had a loadout. I would actually have a loadout that I told my team to have. I might be 3 fragmentation grenades each, the common gear. We'd have medical gear. Might have 2 flashbangs. And then I would give other gear as optional. We have certain med kits we'd carry, and try to keep it same. We all knew where the med kits were. Back then we didn't have high-speed tourniquets like they do today, the combat guys. We did more packing as far as medical goes. But we try to keep and integrate this so the package we took on one mission was the same for another mission. It was same. You had to keep it same and simple. You could use one piece of gear and use it for multiple different problem solving, we'll say. That's what you want to do. You want to keep it as simple as possible. The gear had to work daytime, had to work nighttime. If I had a grip on my gun, I wanted it to work in a day, night, and want my switches in the same spot. I didn't want to have a day grip and a night grip. You've got to keep it very simple. Again, the more simple it is, the more efficient you will become with your gear. When you work these rehearsals encompass everything from helicopter movement, foot movement. If the helicopter gets shot down, what are you going to do? The actual movement to your target, how are you going to move with other people, other elements. You might start your individual skills, then work your rehearsals with your team skills, then your organization will come together, say the special ops folks work together, then you might integrate rangers, then you've got to integrate your air assets, and then you constantly refine your rehearsals. If we didn't do a live hit within, say, a week, we'd actually do another full-blown rehearsal and practice. Rehearsal is practice. If we knew a night mission was coming up, then we'd practice that night mission. We'd work whether it be vehicles, night vision gear, the lasers. We were constantly getting new gear, but going to combat and testing is not a good thing. So it was an OJT with some of the gear. Some worked, some didn't. Some had to develop certain SOPs for the standard operating procedures to use that gear. And so again, it was a constant battle and learning battle. We had on rehearsals, working on a helicopter, daytime was one operation, nighttime was one operation. We've got to know that if we come in and we take fire, how we're going to maneuver around that helicopter, daytime, nighttime. You run into a tail rotor, it'll ruin your whole day. So it'll actually damage the aircraft, damage you probably. So what we need to do is be able to do it daytime, and then nighttime with night vision goggles. So you have to be situationally aware. You always have to be looking at the pilot, the bird, other birds. Again, we had multiple aircraft. You run into one of their tails, it'll hurt them, hurt you. So it was one of those things, there's a lot of moving parts here, and you always got to have your head on a swivel, especially night vision goggles. What they tend to do is bring in your world real close into two paper towel tubes. You're looking at a very narrow focus. You've always got to be looking and checking your battlefield. Left, right, up, down, and scanning, because you can walk into something you don't want to walk into on a nighttime op. One example of gear, not testing it, ammunition. We had a machine gun, M60, common machine gun. Our machine guns, to fire a certain kind of ammo, which is a little bit lighter at the time, they had to be modified. What happens is, I think some of the Rangers saw that ammo, thought they'd go use it, but the first time they used it in combat, now they had a 23-pound dead weight that wouldn't work. Why? Because unless that weapon system was modified, which our armors did, to shoot that ammo, it didn't work. So what happens is they never took the time to practice with it to make sure that ammo worked in that particular gun. Well, what happens is you go to load it, you're in combat, the gun's messing up. Well, it's because you didn't check the ammo ahead of time to make sure it worked. At least I saw that on one occasion. So what you have now is a crew-served weapon that will not function. And then you're getting very frustrated because, you got a whole bunch of this ammo, but it won't work in that gun. The mission on 3-4 October, we had transitioned from going from Aidid himself to his tier assets. When I say tier assets, his colonels, his infrastructure. So what happened is we got an intel hit that there was a meeting. 22 of their folks, we didn't know probably the exact number. The snitch, the best way I can describe him, alerted on the wrong building. He was scared getting close to the target building. So what he did is we planned the target building, and we went out to the birds, getting ready to launch. They called us back in. Said the snitch alerted on the wrong building. We went to the right building, looked at it, planned that building in a rapid manner, went back out, make sure the pilots knew the building where we were going to drop us off, and then we got the code word to go. So we launched the package, about 17 birds, and we flew a pre-planned route. The pilots had planned the routes, looking at different environmental factors to get there quietly, we'll say. And so what ends up happening, we fly the route. We came in on target. There was no fire initially from the gunships. which tells us there was no active threats on the ground. So they peeled off, went their directions, and we came in and landed with the little birds. We originally planned for all of them to come in. There's only room for 3. So the first little bird landed, second little bird landed, third, we were on the 4th. What we did is we did a fly around, a real short racetrack. By that time, this little bird was lifting off. We came in and took the spot. And what we did is we exfilled off the bird, looked around. The target we had planned, we knew where the target was, we didn't know where the doors were. So we went internal into the building and started putting people down. Realized it was a warehouse time we got in there. There was some Somalis standing around. Went through them, went to where we thought, linked up with teams, looked around. By that time, we could hear the pops, the AK pops starting to come. So there was people shooting at us a little bit. We couldn't tell where they're coming from. No close shots, which means there's no concrete, but air balls is what I call them. So they weren't getting close, but they were shooting. So we ended up looking around there, came back outside, looked at the building, looked at the structure, went, about 25 yards. There were shops, different things like that. Went to a corner, made a left down the corner. When I made a left, I went to the first opening, which was a gate. I looked. I could see stairs going up into a building. I said, that's got to be it. I started going up the stairs. I could see one of the guys from the team that found the building. One team had got in there, 4 guys, and they locked it down. They put 22 people down. Great stuff. Good violence of action. And we came in. Seeing it was a multi-story building, what I wanted to do is get the entire structure locked down first. So there was no gunfire, so it's a nonverbal communication. I knew they didn't have any problems. So I said, anybody clearing upstairs? He said no. So I went and launched, took my team, and started working my way up the stairs. What we did is as we moved up the stairs, what we did is we took the first room on the right. Well, the first room on the right, there was a dry hole, nothing in there, nobody in there. There was, I think, some bedding or something that people had been sleeping there. As we went into that room and cleared it, the Rangers, by that time, had been put to ground. So we had now 4 blocking positions around the block. 1, 2, 3. The other blocking position had been left off far. They couldn't find the target building, but they'll come into play when we go to the crash site. So we had blocking positions around us in close proximity, within 50 yards. What ends up happening is we go in that room, one of my guys goes by a window, we take a burst from a SAW, squad automatic weapon, 5.56, it's a light machine gun. And what happened is the fire started on the street, intensified, and then one of the soldiers in that blocking position turned around with that SAW, that squad automatic weapon, and cut loose a burst at our shadows, I guess we'll say. Missed one of my guys by a few inches. So we knew right now things were getting tense. They weren't supposed to point their crew-served weapons at the target building. That was part of one of the SOPs we'd work out during the numerous rehearsals and practice sessions. But we knew, okay, things are getting tight, so it may go ugly a little bit. So we came out on the roof, and as we came out on the roof, we took fire from a concrete lattice probably 2 blocks away. It's a ornamental work on top of a building. You could tell it was an AK by the muzzle flash. Myself and another operator broke right. 2 of them broke left. The guys left, made the shots on them. I yelled at the guys, don't break the visual plane of the roof. What would happen is, if we were going to get shot at from one blocking position, we could get shot at from another. And when I say don't break the visual plane, don't let them see you. What happens is that if they hear a muzzle flash or see a muzzle flash, they may assume it's the enemy, and they may shoot at us. Well, it happened. What we did is I dove for a small wall, probably a 3-foot parapet around that roof, turned my back to it, and then what happened is another blocking position over here, M60 machine gun cut loose on us, and he was chewing up the back of a wall that I was leaning up against, and you could see from the overhead footage the wall just getting torn apart. I could tell it was an M60. So what happened is I just got on my radio. At that time, Norm was getting ready to come out, and I just held my hand up, said, hold what you got. We're getting shot at by friendlies. I said, don't come out. Got on the radio, called the Assault Force Commander. I said, hey, tell the blocking positions, quit shooting at the target building. I said, it's us up here. We're suppressing bad guys that are shooting at us and shooting at them. Stop shooting your weapons at the target building. And I just gave it a few minutes to settle down, get the information passed down to the people in those blocking positions, because what we'd have to do is go from our chain of command to their chain of command, get pushed down to those blocking positions, which may take a minute or two. So what we did is we actually kind of hunkered down, stayed low, crawled back into the building where we were safe, and then we started looking out the windows. What happened is they had enough people downstairs right now wrapping up all the prisoners. During that time, we held a room in a security position up top, that first room we cleared. And what we were doing is we were shooting at bad people up there from that room. But we were also watching the blocking positions, making sure they weren't pointing their guns back at us and going to tune us up. We could see things that they couldn't see, and I would drag a guy, my 203 gunner over, and I'd say, hey, put a round right there. Where people had come out and shot at the Rangers or shot at us, and it kind of keeps them honest. So we were looking for targets of opportunity to put down and keep down to keep them from shooting at the blocking positions. During that time frame, I remember looking out the window, and I could actually saw the CSAR bird, which will come into play later, the Combat Search and Rescue bird, that was the Black Hawk had crashed. I missed that during part of this action. And what happened is a bird had come in and dropped people right on that site. And what I was doing, I was watching people. I thought it was a Ranger blocking position. They were out late. But it was actually the Combat Search and Rescue bird. They were roping people right on the site where that bird had crashed. I'm going, wow. I said, that bird took an RPG right in the tail. The pilot, to his credit, phenomenal guy, held the bird, let everybody get off the bird. I was watching shards of metal shoot out of the tail. And he held the bird steady, let people get off the ropes, limped that bird, nosed it, and then took it back to base, crash landed, got in another bird, and kept flying again. I said, that's the caliber of those pilots. I didn't know at the time that was the first crashed Black Hawk. It had crashed sometime between when we cleared the building, and then what had happened is that bird, there was no dust, no dirt. The pilot shut down all the fuel. You couldn't see it after that. There was no dust cloud, no signature. So the call came a few minutes later of, okay, we got a Black Hawk down. We got to go on foot to get to that Black Hawk. So what ended up happening is we started getting a plan together to move on foot. We waited for the convoy to come in to pick up all our prisoners. So the convoy linked up with us. We were going to go on foot now as part of Rangers, us as a component or package on the ground to move and secure that Black Hawk that was downed. So we held a few minutes, passed information, went downstairs a couple times, came back up, checked on my guys, and waited for the word to report down to the courtyard for movement. One of the things about the movie that I did like was the violence of action. It did portray a good violence of action for a short amount of time. What happened is when we started getting shot at by the AKs, they started escalating. What they would do is they would actually cache their weapon systems in certain spots, which means like a house or building. When the call came and they needed to attack us, they would go to those spots, get their weapon systems, they would assemble on an intersection, and they'd come and hit us. So what happens is it started with AKs and then it started escalating to RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades. Generally an RPG, it's a very simple weapon. The grenade will go 1,000 meters and detonate to generate 900 to 1,000 meters and then explode. But they're good for anti-armor, they're anti-personnel, they'll work on vehicles, they'll work on helicopters if you shoot enough. So what happens is, think about a small AK starting, the rumble getting bigger, more AKs coming to the fight, more people bringing weapons, RPGs starting to come now, shoot through the air, trying to hit helicopters. What had happened is we'd put snipers in the helicopters. During that time, Les Aspin, Secretary of Defense, said you can only have so many people in country. So what we had to do is we didn't have the gunship support we'd asked for. We didn't have armor support. He said, nope, you can have 450 people in country. This is all you can have to do the mission. And so what happens is the leader said, okay, we'll do the mission with that. But to have an air asset and a protection, we had to put our snipers and the birds behind miniguns. Snipers did a phenomenal job. In the first few minutes, they probably killed 100 people that were trying to attack us. They kept them off our backs. The tactical problem is when you slow a helicopter down that slow in a city to make shots, even though you're using miniguns, more people can shoot at you. you can hit from all over the city. A bird took a hit, a lucky hit. The pilot did great things. When I watched the footage, he got it in. He protected the people inside the cargo compartment, rolled the bird in. It wasn't in like the movie in a big open courtyard. It was in an alley. He shut down all the fuel. He kept the people alive in the cargo compartment, but he crushed the bird on him and his co-pilot. Again, phenomenal pilots there. So what happens is this bird crashes. There's people, there's wounded there, there's dead there. Another site, and then we get the call to go secure that site. So by that time, we've got to move downstairs. The convoy has come in. We've uploaded all the prisoners. The convoy's mission at that time was to secure all the prisoners, move them back to base. What ends up happening is that convoy at one point is told to link up with us at the crash site. The problem is from what I understand from talking on the convoys, I wasn't there, but our guys said that the information was not passed down to the convoy what they were looking for. We put 5 of our guys out with the convoy. The guys that captured the initial guys, locked down the target, they went out. There's an old saying, you catch them, you clean them. So they went out with the convoy. Well, to me, those guys helped save that convoy because there was a lot of disconnects there. They were looking for us to crash site. They couldn't find it. There were some communication problems. We'll get into that above that hadn't been resolved during our rehearsals. We worked through all our bugs at our level, but sometimes the command and control didn't fix problems they have, and it came to bite them in the ass on the actual hit. The convoy, armor. We'd asked for armor from day one. Again, we'd used armor before operations. It works great. We know how to work it. The problem is, it goes back to Les Aspin, said, nope, here's what you got. Here's what you got to do the mission with. The Humvees, they come, and that day, they're unarmored. There was you had to up-armor them. When I say up-armor, you had to improvise the armor. If you're worried about landmines, you'd put sandbags on the floor. If you had extra body armor, you might pad the walls with body armor or chicken plates or Kevlar to keep bullets from coming in. Otherwise, they're just like a thin-skinned car. They don't stop bullets. So you had to enhance them through whatever means you had on site there. It could be sandbags, it could be extra Kevlar, body armor, and put them in the sidewalls to help stop bullets. The machine guns and the weapon systems up top, what happens is there's no real protection plate. There's a guy exposed working that weapon system that's got a chicken plate on. When I say a chicken plate, a ceramic plate to stop rifle bullets. He's got a helmet, but that's it. He's in the open air. The problem is you may be engaging one guy, a whole bunch more people can shoot at you. So what you have, basically, speed is your security to get through these situations. Move fast, shoot hard. Sometimes these vehicles, you have very small windows, which, again, you can't get your weapons out to maneuver very tight packages. Sometimes it was better go without the doors, especially if they're not armored, because then I could actually get and shoot and engage faster and put rounds on somebody. So a lot of issues there. Again, the armor, we'd ask for it. Again, I don't want to call it a Democratic president, but his Les Aspin said no. And so what happens is we know what we need to be successful in the missions. Part of the other problem it goes back to is maybe the chain of command needs to look at it and say, okay, if we don't have this, it won't be a very successful mission. We'll start crashing helicopters. So either call off the missions, or say, give us this package. Because the package, the Spectre gunship, can do great things. The Somalis were deathly afraid of it. We wouldn't have to fly helicopters around it. We could hunker down in that building, do an Alamo option, what I call it. Or we just stay in there and say, kill everything outside it. And then when they're done messing around, we'll walk out. Or we'll bring in armor to get us. So there's a lot of options out there you can do, but you got to have somebody supporting the troops there. So we asked for it. The administration said, no, you can't have it. Simple as it is. Again, then the commanders have to weigh, okay, is the mission worth it? Because when you start slowing down these helicopters slow enough to provide suppressive fire, a lot more people can shoot at you. I don't want to get too much into the convoy, but I'll talk a little bit about it because one of the guys who was instrumental to me in saving that convoy was Matt Rearson. Phenomenal soldier, team leader. He was actually the first one in the target building, and they actually locked down all the people, the prisoners that we were looking for. And so he went out with the convoy with the prisoners. And Matt was, his background was a Ranger. And that's what a lot of people think, that I have a disdain for Rangers. I don't. Rangers are just another soldier, and they're the feeders, the people that come into the unit are either from generally SF or Rangers. And I served with a lot of great Rangers, phenomenal guys. These guys came to the unit, were exceptional people. Matt was one of those. On the convoy, he went out. When I talked to him afterwards, he was. I could almost see, he was emotionally distraught because of the inefficiency, the convoy, their SOPs or lack of SOPs. He relayed to me that he, at one point, he went up to the convoy commander and said, "What are we doing? Where are we going?" And all he got was a 1,000-mile stare. The information wouldn't get passed back down the convoy. So Matt and his guys were, they're doing great things. They're cross-loading vehicles, looking for vehicles through vehicles, for down vehicles, what I should say, for soldiers, injured people, dead, making sure we bring all those folks back. And the convoy was in a stop-and-go procession, so to speak. From my understanding, they're trying to link up with us at the crash site. Some people were counted that they had seen us, but didn't know that's where they're supposed to go, and that's what they're looking for. As far as I'm concerned, Matt and his guys were instrumental in saving that convoy. Just a phenomenal guy. And then on the 6th of October, outside the hangar, the command group was talking, and a 160 mil mortar came in that group, took out a bunch of chain of command and killed Matt Rearson. So it was just it was a tragedy. A phenomenal man. He's one of those guys that you want to work with and you aspire to be. The convoy, there was a 7 to 8 second delay in communications from directing them as they were moving. And what would happen is they'd tell them to turn right now. The problem is it would take 7 to 8 seconds to get to that convoy because of the relay. Well, what happened is they might blow through one intersection, two intersections, turn down the wrong intersection. It might be a dead-end street. During this time, they're getting shot up the whole time. From what I understand, the Somalis are running parallel streets, engaging them at the intersections. And so all they had enough time to do is reload their mags and they hit the next intersection. Especially when you've got to turn vehicles around and come back out, it was chaos with the convoy. The violence of action is probably similar to the movie. A lot of guys told me just incredible. RPGs hitting the doors so close that they didn't arm. So they would hit the door, bounce off, and it'd be spinning around the ground with a rocket motor. Just incredible stuff. The violence going on. Taking a lot of casualties in the vehicles, just... and again, unacceptable for not having that coordinated ahead of time. Information was not being passed back to the guys in the vehicles. This is the team that went out with all the prisoners. A lot of the prisoners got shot up in that convoy from their fellow Somalis. But Matt was just incensed that information was not getting passed back. Some guys said they had seen the crash site, but the other elements of the convoy didn't see it. So they're rolling. They don't know that's where they're supposed to go. So the convoy ended up, again, I'm glad they let them come back, got shot up so bad. They're all coming back in, run flats on their vehicles, and they're limping in, just casualties all over the place. The prisoners are shot up. They're just, bad situation. The team that went out with them did a exceptional job getting them organized, cross-loading vehicles. Their basic skills that they should have had when they got out. As far as coming back out in the convoy, it's portrayed in the movie. They tried to push back out to us, and I don't think it was a good decision. They put a lot of our support people, man, and I think that's just outstanding that they wanted to come out and fight to get to us. But the fire was so heavy at that time, you've got to sometimes bring in your big guns like your gunships and just slay some folks before you can actually drive those vehicles back out. They pushed towards what they call K4 circle, and the fire was so intense they had to pull back to base. So they tried a movement back out with a lot of support people on it, just couldn't do it. You would have taken so many casualties they pushed through, it wasn't worth it. We needed big guns out there. We need to make some decisive calls. We need to bring in either fast movers, that's jets, artillery, mortars. Probably had a lot of that at our disposal, but again, commands now are worried about what? They're worried about excessive damage, collateral damage. Well, you can't do that in war. What you do when you go into a fight, it needs to be a 1-2 knockout punch. You need to go for the juggler. And you've got to have that mindset. The problem is some of our chain of command did not have that mindset. This thing's ballooning out now, and we've got to just take it to them. We've got to set a new tone in that country, understand that we're going to kill you wholesale if you mess with us. But we never put that point across. This day we did, estimates we killed over 1,000 people with light weapons, but we hadn't sent a good message to them. During this battle, we should have brought in some more assets. The problem with bringing in 10th Mountain to do gun runs, if we haven't worked with their helicopters before, we don't know their safety parameters or their accuracy of their weapon systems, it can get dangerous. You can get fratricide, which is basically soldiers killing other soldiers. So, again, that's where you don't want to bring in mixed apples and oranges. All right, when we came off the building and we got the word that a Black Hawk had crashed, the word was we had to move 500 yards. We didn't know exactly, said that direction. So we didn't get a good location. It was Black Hawk down 500 yards that direction. That's all the information we knew. So the commanders were planning down below in the courtyard. So the plan was Rangers up front, us in the middle, Rangers in the back. I don't know if it was a precious cargo type concept. We never worked with them on a foot movement. So that was one of the problems here as far as rehearsals. So got the word, got set up, time to go. We started moving. My team took the left side of the street. Other teams took the right, just how things fell out that day. And we started moving down the street. Now we're taking sporadic fire. So the problem that I remember most was kind of frustrating. It was a stop and go process. What you're fighting is a G, a gorilla, and a loincloth, AK-2 mags, and pajamas. He can run circles around you. You're wearing, 70, 80 pounds of gear. You've got to get there in position before he does, otherwise you're going to fight him out of the position. So we start moving this formation down, and it almost seemed like a lockstep formation where the commander, the Ranger Company commander, was trying to move them in a certain mechanical fashion. The problem is you can't do that. You just got to keep taking ground. If there's nobody there, you got to push forward. So we started moving, and what would happen is we'd have multiple teams ahead of us, Rangers, and maybe one or two of our own teams, and we'd have rounds bleeding through the front, which means bad guys shooting is coming through all the teams that may hit the 4th, 5th team. Somebody may go down. One of my vivid memories is, a guy gets hit, he goes down, I believe it was a leg wound, and everybody stops to treat him. And the key is we got to keep pushing forward, because let the medic handle that, and then we push forward, find out what shot him, and then put rounds into him. And that stops that fire. What ended up happening is, the medic started treating right there in the open. You could pull 5 feet away, had a good solid wall to treat behind. You don't want to treat right there, because if he got shot there, you can get shot there. So we had to kind of kick some folks in the butt and get them going, pushing forward. I remember at that point, the street was narrowing down, and we went several blocks, leapfrogging intersections. It's a technique, and that where we kept suppressive fire, because we get up to an intersection, and you could almost see the bullets skimming down from the direction they're coming along the walls, sparking off, creating dust, the cracks. What you'd have to do is take that intersection, we snap a corner, it's a technique, take it back from a guy, and then push across. But we maintain and own that. Sometimes you have to wait till the guy did a magazine reload, where you could tell the guy's shooting a certain amount of ammo, he's not hitting anything, he's got to do a reload pretty quick, then you get a lull. That's a lull, where he's doing a reload, then you snap out, you take the corner, and you start suppressing places where people can be. And so what would happen is then we start launching guys across, and we just do a leapfrog technique all the way down, so we do that every block. Guys would come out from our special ops, and they get frustrated, they come out in the middle of the street, they would launch rounds down the street to put suppressive fire down, because we weren't it didn't seem like the guys up front were putting enough fire, 12 o'clock or direction of travel, to keep the incoming fire from coming in. So guys are getting frustrated. We ended up, I went from left side of the street, eventually as we're getting close to the right side. And what happened, I looked over a wall, there's a Somali in the yard, he's bleeding heavily, moaning. Somebody serviced him, shot him. And then I looked left up this alley, and it was actually a street, but it narrowed down, kind of went uphill, and I could see the crown of the hill, and it dropped down. I watched a little bird come from right to left, and when little bird kicked smoke, when I say kick smoke, he threw a smoke grenade, actually I think pushed it off of with his foot, and what ended up happening is I go, boom, I knew that's a crash site. So what I did is I said, tell the assault force commander on me, and I started moving down that street on the left-hand side. Other teams started following me. They got on the other side of the street, and we started pushing down towards the bird. I think Captain Steele said we left him. No, we didn't. We just attacked in a different direction. What happened is we knew we were going to get there. We can punch through faster. We're more efficient on ground movement, and so we just started getting there. The biggest problem is if we got stopped and locked down, too many casualties, we'd have two separate perimeters we'd have to defend that night, and that would be a very dangerous and situation you don't want to be in. So we started moving down the left-hand side. If we needed to, we'd punch in a room, do close quarter battle, make sure it's safe. We'd catch our breath. We'd get some water into us, reload magazines. I'd go, okay, point, this is where I need to go next. I remember going down that street, and we're on one side here. Other side, we got up to this intersection. What ends up happening is I'm looking across an alley to my right, and I see guys rolling across it. So I've got a ranger. He's hunkered down, face down in the dirt, and bullets are skipping around, and my ATL's yelling, tell him to shoot those motherfuckers. And before I could even yell it, I just brought my weapon up, serviced the guys as they're running across, and I just screamed at them. I said, shoot the motherfuckers. And it's a very frustrating situation because my guys were seeing some issues. The guy was taking fire, shot over the top of him, not a desired technique, but looking at his posture and everything, before I shot, I said, no, he ain't going to jump up into my bullets. So it was getting to be the right side, just because of geometric angles, taking a lot of heavy fire right here. These guys couldn't see us on this side. They're getting hit from a building over here. It's coming in here. We're actually running underneath the fire. And you might be right across the street from somebody. Again, you're walking upright, they're crawling to try to make ground. So saw that, we got up to the next intersection. What happens is we launched across. As we punched across the next intersection, we got up to, we could start seeing Rangers in there, a blocking position, or what we call a battle position. We looked to the right, down an alley, and you couldn't get to almost right on line with it. We could see the Black Hawk upside down. No smoke, no dust, no debris, but we could see the fire coming down. And it was in an alley off to our right. Two of my guys launched right across the street. There was a Ranger blocking position there. So they went ahead and started reorienting their weapon systems, because we were seeing fire come from the alley like this, skimming down the walls. And I could watch the soldiers over here. What they were doing is they're putting up little plates out of the helicopter. What they were doing is using them as shields. They were trying to evac the bird down to another building. And they were basically providing fire support, or launching rounds or shields for those guys moving people out. It was a lot of chaos going on at that point. Looking at the situation, we got to get off the street. So we're here, let's establish a CP, command post. So what I did is I looked at the metal gate there. I started pushing on one side. I thought about putting a charge on it, but the charges required for that gate would have been too heavy. So I decided, nope, it's not going to go. Started pushing on with my shoulder. Had a CCT guy with me. He started pushing. His side gave first, and so we ended up dumping into a courtyard. Courtyard was empty, I believe. There's a door on the right-hand side where the actual living quarters of the house was. What we ended up doing is, I didn't know if another team was there, so I said, all right, on me, if I get shot, just, back me up. We hadn't worked interoperability with him, so what I did is I went in and then started pieing the rooms. I caught a family in a back room. I motioned them out, come to me instead of me going in. They came out to me. By that time, another team had come in behind, and then we were locked down, ready to take the rest of the house. So what we did is that we actually had a family in there. Took over their house, pulled them into an inner room where we could protect them all night and keep them safe, because we didn't want to hurt anybody. The innocent family caught in a crossfire. If we keep them in a room close to windows, bullets can bleed in there, RPGs can bleed in there. So what we do is we pulled them in and then got them in a safe spot, and we protected them all night. People don't hear those sides of the story, but that's part of the other job there. Level of fire intensity. Once we came down that street, we broke from the center of the Ranger formation, and we started pushing. It started increasing. When I say RPGs started coming in, you can see like a ball coming at you. We've had those come in. I just try to keep my mouth open for the overpressure, and it seemed like they were like flashbangs, which means there are a lot of them coming in. We got machine gun fire coming from down that street, so we're starting to push through a lot more heavy fire, and that crash site now became a focal point for the bad guys. They're coming. They figured out where it's at. They're starting sometimes 2 blocks to our north, or 12 o'clock. They're working that area there, shooting at us. That alley was, I call it RPG alley. A lot of stuff and machine gun fire coming down that alley. You can see, again, bullets skipping off the walls, dust sparks, and we had to develop a position right there. So we got the house and started pulling people in that house. And what happened is, I remember going out initially, back out on the street. 2 of my guys were across the street, and they were reorienting some positions. So as soon as I came out and broke onto the street, I've got a guy there from the Rangers with a Beretta, one hand, and what he's doing is shooting back into a window I just cleared. I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I saw something move." I said, "Yeah, that's us. There's friendlies in there." And he just kind of looked at me. He had that look. I said, "Okay." And so not much you can do at that point. So what we started doing is pulling. Command elements started catching up with us. We pushed those folks in there. We had elements across the street directly. And then we started developing the situation and what we needed to do at that point. So command group started getting in. When I say a command group, 2 captains from our element and then 2 sergeant majors. So they're in there now. We've got 2 of our teams. And what we've done is we've established a base of fire now, and we're launching rounds generally to the north and suppressing enemy up there. All right, what happens on the initial move when we pulled out, we've got this long formation with Captain Steele. And so what happens is he's probably up front here. We're in the middle. I see the action here. I start moving this direction here. All we did was pull the center out of the formation and attack in a different direction. Once we pulled out of the formation and started pushing forward, we automatically just key off each other. It's one of those things we're used to working around. It's nonverbal. There's so much noise what you can't comprehend with the machine gun fire going off, people shooting next to you, RPGs coming and exploding, that I can be yelling from across the street to another person. They can't hear me. It goes to visual. So auditory exclusion sets in. I actually used to go to combat with earplugs in because I can always pull one out at night and I can hear the bad guys. But if I'm tone deaf at night, then I can't hear the bad guys coming. So what we started doing, moving down the street, pushing forward, buying territory, simple as it is, in a rapid manner. At what point the Rangers followed us, I don't know. There was no different than the movie. There was no discussion with Captain Steele. We had places to go, things to do. We got there. So we started moving, pushing forward. We became the point element for the moving element. It's simply what we did. So Captain Steele pulled up, and he came to that position that I dictated on the map, that first position. That's where his final position was there. But the key was, if we didn't get to the bird, we would have 2 separate perimeters. That had been unacceptable that night. Probably one of those perimeters would have been overrun. So we got everybody in the package all the way to the bird. That's what the mission was at that point, secure the bird. Why? The pilots' bodies were crushed, trapped in the bird. We couldn't get them out. We needed quickie saws, straps, things like that to pull them out. Didn't have them on site with us. So we had to bring those in the next morning. So we got there. The fire was intense at that point. The movie is a good depiction of it. Very intense for about 30 minutes to, say an hour or 2. You lose track of time. But what ends up happening is we start pulling people into the different positions. We pulled a second team. I had my team and another special ops team, our sister team, that came into the CP. Some other folks filtered across the street, but it was a composite. There were a few Rangers, one of our medics, I think a Ranger lieutenant was across the street. Our command finally came in there, so we started working out and chopping up this target now, how we're going to process it. So my guys were outside already. One of our sergeant majors said, "Hey, you need to get with your guys and check on them." I said, "I know what my guys are doing." I was kind of frustrated at that point because I was looking for some positive guidance of what we're doing, and they're more looking at one commander than our commander. Everybody's looking at him like, I hate to say it, like a puppy dog. What do we do now? And versus let's do proactive action. So I got pissed. I went outside, pulled all my guys in the CP, the command post there, and I just started laying down a base of fire. What I started doing is taking targets of opportunity up that street to the north, and I just started putting bullets in doorways, windows, picket fences. If I got a runner across the street, I would do a progressive lead on him with 3 shots. I wasn't wasting a lot of ammo. I was using my front sight. What I was doing is taking that street back. When I'd come out, what I'd have is a tree in front of me, big leafy tree, and I didn't know if anybody's in the tree, so I put bullets in the tree to make sure that nobody's going to fall out of it, because some of the bad guy could have climbed up in there. There was an old green Fiat right there in front of the tree, so I started working areas all around that could hide a human being. Came back in. At that point, a lot of things going on. We've got to take the initiative and get the fire control back in our favor. So what we're doing, I saw the ranger there. One of my guys, they'd actually come off the street, pulled one of the rangers in, had been shot. And I recovered his rifle, 3 or 4 mags went out, stacked him in the dirt, and then started engaging with his rifle. I figured we're going to be there for a while. I want to keep all my ammo, don't want to get mine dirty. So I stashed it, used his rifles to suppress. Engaged multiple targets on the street, I call darters, people running from across the street up to 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away. I was letting them know that people could see them and they shouldn't come this way. I had a blocking position, a little bit downhill. This is the Rangers, say 25 yards in front of me. And so the problem is they were what I call weapons tight, which means they weren't shooting. My guys had pulled back in, so they were back to their organizational control there at that battle position. So I was actually shooting over the tops of their heads, but they were depressed a little bit in front of me. So I was shooting probably a foot, 2 foot over their heads. They couldn't jump up into my bullet, but I was actually shooting at threats down there. You'd have people try to break a corner, and you might engage them, or you might throw a grenade at those corners, because the grenade will go past the corner and clear everything out around that corner. So I don't know, 2, 3 grenades. I'd launch them over the blocking position at what I consider threat areas. Had a big courtyard right next to where they were. I remember seeing a grenade coming over that wall, a Russian grenade, because they leave a little smoke trail. And so I would throw frags over that wall, just try to get as much aggressiveness back into the fight as possible. We're where we wanted to be, but now we need to let the people know this is not a good place to be, the bad people. We don't want them coming in. We don't want to have to fight them. So if they come in, we're going to shoot them, put bullets in them. They're going to go back with it ventilated, so to speak. During these little instances, I'm watching across at the folks taking everybody out of the bird. I'm watching rangers there putting up little sheets of Kevlar, protect themselves. I watched one ranger took a round on the chicken plate. He fell over, took a round right again the chicken plate. He realized, boy, that ain't a good spot, and scurried off. It's one of those things, somebody was zeroed in, but he's lucky he got hit in the chicken plate twice. During the same incident right there, I got a lieutenant across the street. He sees what I'm doing in my area, but he didn't realize I have a big tree there blocking view. You've got cover and you've got concealment out there. And what concealment is, it hides the visual. Cover stops bullets. You can have both, but I had concealment. The only time they'd actually shoot at me is when I'd come out of the building and then start moving down. Then they couldn't see me anymore. So they wouldn't put any effective fire. When I go back into the CP or come out is when I'd take fire. They would spark around me. Had a ranger across the street. There was a lieutenant that put him in the middle of the street, kind of doing what I was doing, but he was exposed to everything. Didn't have a tree blocking. He stayed there. I remember, screaming at him, say, get in that doorway, which is like 5 feet away. And what ends up happening is he can't hear me. I mean, we're 7 to 10 yards away. The noise is so loud. He stays there. I watch bullets sparking all around him. He gets hit. Boom. So what ends up happening, our guys from the CP, we start laying down suppressive fire, go out, grab him, drag him into our CP. And that's now a casualty collection point. So we're starting to treat people in there. My guys start working on him. One of the guys they worked on took a round through the buttocks, blew out one of his testicles. They shoved a whole roller to a Curlex in him. He actually survived, the battle without definitive care, 12, 14 hours. Did real good. I came back in a couple times during this episode. I get more ammo on, I think, my second or third trip outside. The rifle jammed up on me. Lubrication issues, magazine, don't know what, double feed. So I took that back in, threw it in there. I was getting real frustrated by this point because we had another element in front of us and they weren't laying down enough fire. They weren't hammering the bad guys. At this point, we get into the combat mindset. Anybody coming to that fight was wrong. If it was a woman, man, it didn't matter. You don't come to a gunfight unless you want to play. If a woman runs across the street with an apron and it's full of something, it's not ho-hos and Twinkies. She's got AK mags, she's got frags. She's taken that to a battle position to resupply the fighters. It's a family affair over there. So if you shoot at her or put rounds on her, that's fine. She shouldn't be there. And that's what we crossed a line that day as far as combat. They become part of a crew serve weapon. So I remember launching rounds at one gal. I can't remember if I hit her or not. A lot of things your mind kind of blanks out in combat. But I remember all the Rangers looking back at me at the battle position in amazement. And I was cussing at them the whole time. I was pissed at that point. I've been shot at by them 3 times. They weren't laying fire down now. And then I was having to suppress over the top of them. I was actually throwing grenades over the top of their position at corners and different areas and then launch rounds. I was a little bit frustrated. So it's one of those things that it happens out there. They couldn't hear me, but they could see the expression on my face. It is what it is. Another frustrating point was where that one Ranger was hit right across the street. Our guys brought him in. Whoever that leader was over there put him another one in the same spot. And so that person got hit. Being in the same spot, undefensible location. He was a good soldier, stayed there because his chain of command told him to be there. They ended up pulling him back into that building, and from my understanding, it was the kid that ended up dying that night. Kurt Schmidt was over there, worked on him for 5 hours, and kept him alive, but the femoral artery retracted up in the body. I attribute that to lack of leadership. Early on in the battle rehearsals, the Ranger company commander put lieutenants in charge of battle positions, 4 battle positions. What happens is there is an organizational structure to the military, which means you've got fire teams, squads, multiple squads make up a platoon. There's a chain of command in there and a platoon sergeant. A platoon sergeant is an NCO, non-commissioned officer, that has probably 12 to 14 years experience. If you bring in a lieutenant, an officer that has 2 to 3 years experience, you're pushing this a platoon sergeant aside, all this experience to put an officer in there. One officer cannot lead 15 people. That's why you have subunit elements that lead. You have fire team leaders. A fire team leader, we found out in World War I, it actually turns into a 3 to 5 person element to make contact, knock out machine gun nests. All the noise and confusion that goes to visual, which means what I can see is what I can control. So what happens is when you put one person in charge of 15, they cannot control 15 people. They cannot control all those different actions happening at the same time. You've got to train those people to think ahead of time, and when this happens, you do this. If that happens, you do that. But when you put one person in, they try to run everything, you can't work it. Especially if I'm working a battle position and I'm watching down this street, and that street, all at the same time. There's 3 different things happening. My mind can't process the information. What I need is those fire team leaders running those fire teams. When a lieutenant tries to do it, he can't do it. The lieutenant has limited experience. He's an officer. He has shortcutted the system as far as tactics, techniques. Those kids could have been moved 5 feet to a doorway, had good cover, laid down just effective fire. Instead, he put them in a street in an undefensible position. And what happens at that point, they stayed there because they're good soldiers, and they got hit. And so that's unacceptable. And so early on, the problems we brought up, the Ranger Company commander deemed it, I don't know if he's trying to get these lieutenants on a job training in a combat zone, which is unacceptable. Soldiers' lives are very, very important, and they did what they're supposed to do, stayed, but they got shot. And so they become casualties in this battle. All right, during this time frame, listening to the radio, monitoring traffic, trying to sort things out in the situation, looking at the big picture, trying to find the big picture, what our mission is. Again, trying to get that from our assault commander in there and get information passed down to the teams because we need to be taking more ground, adjusting our position. During this time, I heard 2 calls for help from the other Blackhawk with Randy Shugart and Gary Gordon. What ended up happening, I used to be on a sniper team, worked with these guys my whole career. I heard the element call, the call sign, and I knew it was a sniper team. I didn't know where they were. Hadn't got the call over the radio that we had a second Black Hawk down. What ended up happening, I heard one call, it was from Randy. He said, hey, we need some help down here. Didn't know where they were. I said, man, we're in our own little fight here. This is going to be tough. I didn't know if they were part of our element, where they were. About 30 minutes later, I heard the same call, but he goes, hey, we're going to need some help down here or we're going to get overrun. At that point, they were never heard from again. The problem is the command and control bird did not hear that. Now, I'm a mile away on the ground with all these buildings in the way, and I can hear it. The command and control bird put them on the ground, couldn't hear it, lost control, things we brought up during the rehearsals, and they didn't fix it. They had multiple problems going on now with the command and control, which means you got people on the ground, a big element, you got a convoy, you got 2 helicopters now that are crashed, too many different moving parts that they can't control up there from the air, and they didn't figure out a way to deconflict it. So, in short, they put 2 guys on the ground, didn't provide them fire support, and kind of left them out there hanging. That's the way I look at it. They didn't hear them. I can hear them a mile away with all the buildings in the way. They should be hearing them up in that command and control bird from the ground straight up. There's no interference. Now, during the fight, the onset of this fight, we've got little bird air support. What ends up happening with little birds is they start making runs on their own. They see targets of opportunity, they're taking them out. We're not really calling at that point for fire support because they're seeing work, they're finding work. They're finding work all through the battlefield. They're taking bad guys out for us. What ends up happening is when you put guys on the ground, the only thing they've got is an advantage is that air support. So we had a mass of people on the ground that we could sustain ourselves. I mean, we could use our own firepower internal that we brought to the fight with all the people to hold that defensive perimeter. Those 2 guys that went down to try and recover 4 guys on a Black Hawk, you can't do that. You can only cover so many directions. 2 guys can, and try to pull people out and do medical, it's just, you can't do it. They should have sliced them some air assets, and I don't know if they, basically the word I got, they didn't. Those guys are hanging by themselves, lightly armed, against overwhelming odds where they should have had a couple gunbirds making runs for them and just keeping the bad guys at bay. Again, we didn't have a Spectre gunship. Spectre gunship could have split sites. We could have sent one over there, or we could have used little birds on ours, gunship over there. They could have hunkered down and just killed everything in a circle. But again, we talk about combat mindset. We got it. We're on the ground. We're in the fight. The command's got to have it too. I don't know. Questions we never got answered. Could the command and control bird have gone over there, used the miniguns on that bird, and helped suppress and protect him? Don't know. You always got to look for work and options. And again, I know it's after the fact, but we had done this so much, to whom much is given, much is expected. I always got that phrase thrown at me as a lower level guy in special ops. It goes both ways. It goes with the chain of command too. I expect a lot out of you. You're up there on a bird, air conditioned bird, you're out of the fire. I expect you to do more things, protect us, because if you're going to put us on the ground, you're going to give us the fire support. That's how simple as it is. And they lost control with comms. They lost control with fire support and put 2 guys out there that did the best they can for as long as they can and got overrun. So to me, that's unacceptable. All right, to tie it all together, we're at Crash Site 1. We're starting to organize Crash Site 1. Now, what we've got going is we've got a second Black Hawk down. As a team leader, didn't know that. When I knew a guy was calling for help, I didn't know he was on that bird. So we got that bird down. The convoy now, the lost convoy, is driving around the city. Don't know the problems they're having until after the actual action. So the convoy. So we've got Crash 1, Crash 2, convoy. And then we've got us in this situation. Discrepancy in the movie, just to kind of fill you in, there were no technicals that I saw that day. Reference to technicals. The technicals are vehicles we call, say, a Toyota Land Cruiser that were adapted for heavy machine guns that were traditional civilian vehicles, but you see the big machine guns, Russian machine guns on them, and you'll see them in the movie. Never saw one. So the movie, a little bit embellished, we'll say, a little bit of that. But the little birds had orders to kill those anytime they were seen. So if a technical came out, they were automatically gunned. So never saw any of those that day. At about that point, we're looking at, I'm going to take a guess, 4:35, still broad daylight. And it's just getting on the verge of going to night. I've come back in the command post for about the third time. I'm looking at the chain of command. I'm seeing what kind of responses. Again, I'm trying to see if they're making plans. I make a suggestion to the TAC commander. This is our special ops commander that is running the ground action and is in charge of the whole package right now. And I tell him we need to go across the street and take that building, because I want to get better fields of fire. What I want to be able to do is push across and be able to hit guys 100 yards, 200 yards out before they get to us. He goes, no, I need to go across the street, which means he wanted me to link up with the combat search and rescue crew. I said, that's okay, but it's in a mop closet. When I say it's fields of fire so short, I can't engage people to within 25 yards. I don't like that, because they can break corners. When they can break a corner, they can hose you with a machine gun, they can shoot an RPG. I want to be able to hit them 2 blocks away and put them down. The other thing we needed to do is the courtyard. There was a 2-story building overlooking this courtyard right next to where the CP was. If the bad guys got in there, they could have dropped grenades right in the CP. I told him you need to clear that, put a team up there, put them up height. It was never cleared all night. So he was trying to sort out a lot of things. He had a lot of stuff going on. He was almost by himself, running multiple frequencies and radio nets. He did a good job. He had another TAC commander, we'll say, special ops, who was OJTing on the hit. Wasn't helping him much, one of our guys. We had 2 of the what I call troop sergeants or platoon sergeants for our element. They were SF guys, and I don't want to call them vapor locked. They were used to a surgical environment. This is now combat. The one remarked to me, I went and stripped grenades off one of the Rangers, went back out. He said, you're throwing grenades. And it's like, yeah, I'm not getting paid to bring them back. He didn't realize he's got a guy at his feet, shot through one of the testicles. My guys are shoving Kerlex up in his inside this guy. And he didn't realize the severity of the situation. This is no longer a surgical hit. This is combat. So some people didn't switch over, even in our group, to the point where we need to be slaying some people. This is they're coming to the fight. They're wrong. They got to get tuned up. We're working that out. I finally got with the commander, and after a little bit of argument, I said, screw it. I work for you. I'll go over there, take it. I got my team ready. Best I can tell, we waited about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, got a little darker. And then what we did is we launched across the street. It was an open door, didn't know who was in there, so we punched in, ready to do close quarter battle. Turns out there was people in there already, our friendlies in there, a mixed element, partial of our teams, partial Rangers. So what we ended up doing is we went in there, we cleared, pulled back, and what we had is a doorway. My doorway that I took for my team leader position, I could see one intersection here, one intersection here. Now, what happened is we had little bars that separated. It was 2 to 3 rooms deep, and we had bars that separated the next house. So what the guys did is they pushed the bars out. It was cheap mortar, and they actually moved into this next area there. In there, we had a Special Forces medic, and he was treating the soldier that took the femoral hit. And there were some folks in that area never got over there. What happens is my ATL, assistant team leader, took my other guy on the team, went in there, and then one of them took one window, one of them took another window. What we did is we interlocked our fields of fire as our team, and we covered a certain sector. What we did is we covered a street to the left, RPG alley that we talked about, and a whole street to the north. And that was our fields of fire for the next 12, 14 hours. What ended up happening is the fire actually died down. Probably after an hour, 2 hours, it kind of died down, got slow, got deathly quiet. We punched across the street when it was just getting dark, took that building, occupied it, and then set up a perimeter. And what we did is we just said, here's the line in the sand. And that was my thought process. We're going to bunker down. We're going to, anybody that comes in this line, we're going to kill. If they're coming, they're coming to a gunfight. They want to play, so we'll play with them. Now, we tried to interlock some fields of fire with other teams. The problem is once it gets dark, you don't know if you're talking about the same points. So what we want to do is make sure our fires are overlapped. So if I can, hit somebody, they can hit them too. And if I miss them, they can hit them. What ends up happening is sometimes we talk, but we're not talking about the same reference points. So you want to try to do that stuff in the daytime. That's a learning point. At that time, we've gone to just over our handheld radios. We're worried about battery life. A lot of times special ops will spend money on, I don't want to call it frivolous stuff, but the radio batteries are critical. And back then it was a simple, I think, NICAD, which means you could only talk a certain amount of time. So what we did is we turned half our radios off, so we relayed the information from battle buddies. That way we doubled our battery life. One of those things back then we needed critically was good lithium batteries for a handheld radio that lasts a week. It's a life support issue. We didn't have at the time, so we did the best we could. Now, the nets or information channels is we were on one net. So what we do is we talk amongst each other. We start interlocking our team fires. So this team here, this team there, we got this position, we got this covered, and we're coordinating among the team leaders. There's no higher headquarters. They're all in the talk, doing whatever they're doing, or the command post, the CP. And what we're doing is interlocking it between team leaders. Here's what I can see. Here's what I'm going to cover. Fields of fire, all that. And then what it did is it got deathly quiet. The bad guys couldn't figure out where we were. So, and that was good. Now, little birds are still making gun rounds off in the distance. What would happen is the Somalis, they would mass in a different area. They get on vehicles. The vehicles would bring them into this area where we were. They dismount, they get on an intersection, and they start moving down the street. Well, a little bird would come in, not like in the movie, they don't hover. They come in and do a gun run. They'll fly in between the buildings, they'll wag their tail a little bit with a minigun that fires 2,000 to 4,000 rounds a minute, and they kill 40, 50 people like that. The learning curve did not go up. The Somalis would do it again, and they kill 40, 50 more. Very surgical, very precise, and they come in and they just wear them out. And so the Somalis, one thought process, they thought we were probably trapped. We're not. We were there because we wanted to be. We're going to get those pilots out. We were a meat grinder. We just kept turning the handle. They kept putting people in. We kept killing people. At that point, ammunition-wise, still had all my ammo for the most part. All the ammo I came with, I probably fired, moving up from the target building all the way to the crash site, I probably fired less than one magazine getting there because there's no ammo ferry out in life. There's nobody going to bring you more ammo. If you need it, you just got to look around. There's dead, there's wounded. They don't need their rifles, they don't need their pistols, they don't need the frag grenades. You can use all that because it'll make them lighter also. If you got people that aren't willing to fight, you can go back and strip them. They're an ammo bearer.
I'm getting ready to move out of here now, make a left towards the east, and then head north towards the smoke. I think I have ID'd the smoke, over. Roger, shot at the squad there, Sheriff. We will try to get you out. And 6-4 is going to double on to the second crash site. Roger, I do have Tigerese. Just one next to over. Roger.
All right, now we've got a lot of moving parts in this battle. Let me try and recap where everyone's at. We talked about the ammo situation. We really weren't critical on ammo. Again, you've got dead, wounded. You can use their ammo. It makes them lighter. Now, we're in position. It's getting quiet. We've got Captain Steele. We've got the Ranger Commander about a block away from us. He hasn't made it up to our site yet. Story that I received on that, one of our team leaders said, "Hey, come on in here." He's with his fire support officer. Guys just got shot on the street there. He said, "No, I'm talking on the radio. I'm busy." That time, his fire support officer took a hit. Well, he left him, dove through the threshold, and our medics had to go out and get his fire support officer. So we've got wounded in the package. We've got two of our teams, the Ranger Commander about a block, half a block away. We're separated by, half a block of a building that has not been cleared yet. So we don't know if there's any people in there. We've got medical emergencies strewn out, several points during the site. We've got the combat search and rescue package. They're in the same block, we just don't know where. The problem we run into, I can't blow interior charges. I don't know if they're in the next room. If I blow an interior charge to get into that room, I might blow it on a team. So what happens is we don't want to frag our own guys. So we don't end up actually linking up with them until in the morning. But we've got sections of this block, almost like a T, that we have not cleared yet. We don't know if there's families in there, people in there. We just had to go quiet for the rest of the night. So multiple positions, everybody goes quiet, and we're just waiting for things to develop. Little birds are making gun runs still, and then all we do is sit and wait. We watch the battlefield. When I say watch the battlefield, I'm in a doorway, if you can picture this. I'm looking this way to this way for 10 hours on a knee. And what happens is I'm looking for guys to come around that corner to that corner, to that corner, to that corner. And that's my sector. Distances, about 25 yards. I'm spotting right one time. I see 3 guys come around the corner, 3 shapes. They're jabbering. What happens is they're RPG deaf. They've shot RPGs without earplugs, so they're screaming at each other because they can't hear. Well, I can hear them. I go to my guys and said, haven't the Rangers pulled out from that position? They go, yeah. Just then, a guy from across the street white lights him. Yeah, it looks like raccoons caught in a garbage can, and we started working them over. Started tuning them up. One guy went down hard. 2 came around him, grabbed him, started dragging him up the street. All had bullets in them, but they didn't make it too far up the alley. The team on that side said that they could hear moaning all night, so they probably made it up out of the visual angles, but they were hurt pretty good when we hit them. But the bullets just weren't doing their job unless you hit a bone or hit the spine. Green tip, it's like stabbing somebody with an ice pick. If you hit a bone, hit the spine, yep, they'll drop. Otherwise, it's just quick in and out, doesn't transfer a lot of energy, so it's like an ice pick, best I can describe it. So that was one of the incidents. Guys are coming in, they're probing us. They don't know where we're at. So what we do is we just watch these different sectors. Sometimes we let them come in, then we hit them when they come halfway down the wall. Up until that point, I haven't even been in the back of my rooms. They don't know who's back there. The kid next door, I remember him screaming like in the movie. I blanked out of my mind for a couple years. Talked to Kurt about it. The medic that actually treated him, kept him alive for 5 hours, did a phenomenal job. Pilots were ready to fly the mission with a little bird to come in, but the problem is the little bird can't protect himself. So we didn't let the little bird come in. It's one of those things that you got to make a judgment call. You know, do we kill 2 pilots for 1 soldier? At that point, it was a risk versus gamble. We decided against it. So a hard call to make, but those are the things you got to do in combat. With that, the medic got freed up, and he came and assisted us with some different, issues during the night. One of my guys got dehydrated, so we plugged an IV into him under moonlight, got him back up, his fluid levels. We were running short on water. We carried 1 quart in our pockets with water purification tablets. So we took those. We had a barrel full of rainwater in there. Couldn't tell what it looked like. Didn't care what it tasted like. He'd fill the canteens up, put the tabs in there, and that's what we drank for liquids. Watch guys come in middle of the night, bad guys. They stick a weapon around a corner. And what they do is they shoot. They try to draw fire. And we just watch. And what they do is he'd crawl. They're good fighters. And what they would do is he would put the AK under his arm and he'd crawl in the shadows, using the shadows to try and find out where the CP was. And we'd let him go back around the corner. And what would happen is, as soon as he got back around the corner, we might hit him then. And we were going to hit him, but another position saw him, and they tuned him. And then at that point, there was, say, 5, 6 guys around that corner. So little things like that, every hour or so, kept it kind of lively. But then you'd go, catch your breath, and you would look and just go back into your regular pattern, check your weapon status, make sure you go through all your different. All it is how are we going to survive? If they hit us, what are you going to do? I guess you would call it visualization. Midway in the night, later on, what we had is had a ranged lieutenant back in the room. Didn't know he was there. He comes up. He goes, Sergeant Howe. He goes, Captain Steele wants us to move back to his position. Captain Steele, again, was about a half a block behind us. I didn't even know the lieutenant was back there. He goes, Captain Steele wants us to all pull back to his position. I said, Lieutenant, the mission's on the bird right there. If you want to pull back, you can. He's about a block that way. Don't know where he's at. We'll cover you. You probably won't make it. Well, that lieutenant went back and sat down. That's where he stayed all night with a handset stuck in his ear. As far as I'm concerned, he was an ammo bearer. But it was one of those things that there was no continuity in the chain of command. The mission, when we went to ground, they worked for us. Simple as it is. The problem is that Ranger Company commander would not talk to our assault force commander. Came to the point one of the guys in that position said he took off his radio, stuck it in his face, and he still wouldn't talk to him. And that's disheartening. What you have happening now is two captains in a piston contest and a firefight. It shouldn't be. They work for us. And again, that was kind of glossed over in the book. One of those things is that's unacceptable behavior, and it was never corrected by anybody after the fact. A lot of issues there, speculation why, but egos, and again, we didn't need two perimeters. We needed one perimeter that was all concise. So I can tell you my position, I can't talk about the others. I had 4 shooters there that we covered probably 4 different directions, and that's where we stayed all night. Everybody had a certain sector, and we were on a knee or in that position, and that's what we did all night long. So as far as my position, the other people in there, I couldn't tell you the numbers, who was there. I did have another special operations operator from another team that landed in my position, and I pushed him in the middle of the night. He did a link up with the CSAR folks, which is great, phenomenal, but I couldn't spare the bodies because of our fields of fire. I was worried about getting masked and a lot of people coming around those corners, and I only have 25 yards to service them or shoot them. So I was worried about that. I thought we were going to get overrun. I was, in my mindset, stacking mags, getting ready for a final battle. I had one big frag left. I had deployed the rest of my grenades and a few of the Ranger grenades I took control of, and then just basically waited at that point. Some term it a lack of communication, being on different frequencies, but I think it's actually it's operational necessity. If everybody had a radio, think about all the people that could get on that radio all at the same time and the congestion that would happen. So you needed 2 separate frequencies, but you needed the folks at the top on those 2 frequencies to talk to each other. If they don't talk to each other and work well or play well together, there's an issue. So as far as we're concerned, actually, a lot of said, well, we all had radios. That was a crutch for us. No, it's not. Actually, I turn my radio off a lot of times. If I'm doing business, taking care of business, I can't listen to stuff here, take care of business. I got to take care of business first, and then sometimes I'll turn my radio back on. We actually got to the point where it was nonverbal. I could watch you, how you're moving, what way you're moving, your weapons orientation, to see which way you were going and what you were doing. I could do that visually, because combat auditory exclusion sets in. You can't hear. And so the radio's issue, not really a big deal, except for the commands. If they don't talk to each other, or one person tells one person to do one thing and they don't, that's not a communication issue, it's a leadership issue. There's always fear, and it's, but you learn to control it, and what you try to do in combat mindset is actually, instead of thinking about all the things that can happen, is you think about proactive. What can I do? How can I better my position? How can I survive? How can I help my guys survive? Versus thinking about, woe is me, I'm in this bad position now. You always try to think, okay, it's not me. I got to protect my guys on my team. So you try to minimize the fear. Yeah, you're scared, but what it is you've got to work through that fear and actually keep it in its place. Understand? Yep. But any anxiety that comes from it, channelize it into positive action. And so those are things to think about when you get in those type situations. That's what the individual people that get, I don't know what you call it, just immersed in fear. They're not thinking of. They don't have tactical confidence. They don't believe in their system. They're not thinking, okay, what can I do? How can I solve that? They're going. They shut down. And what you want to do is actually stay proactive. I can't remember exactly when I found out the convoy wasn't going to make it to us. I want to say just probably as it was getting dark. They been run through the meat grinder out there. They've been run down streets. They were dead end streets. Just had a lot of issues. Got shot up multiple times. They're all on run flats. Hit it close. I can't fathom the fire they were under. They did a phenomenal job actually getting back to base. But I want to say probably around getting dark, I don't know, 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, that we've realized that we're on our own overnight. As the night progressed on, in the battle positions where we were, a couple different things did happen. The illumination, everybody worries about the night vision goggles. There's so much illume that night, it was incredible. When I say illume, there was probably 90 to 100% illume with moonlight. You could see things out there. I could use my front sight post with the tritium night sight on people. We kill people with aim points, ACOGs, flashlights, in our iron sights, tritium front sight posts. MVGs would have made it, night vision goggles would have made it a lot easier, but there was no loss of momentum or fight without them. So it got dark, got quiet. Several things happened in the middle of the night. They sent people, and they couldn't pinpoint our location, so they sent people walking through our perimeter in the middle of the night. They would go back, as far as our minds were concerned, to take people and have them mortar us or bring in RPGs to kill us. So when those people walked through our perimeter, we took them out. Again, the way I equate it is a German soldier in World War II walking without his gun into American lines, looking around and walking back to German lines. Unless he's got a flag of surrender, he dies. Sorry, he can't bring that information back because American soldiers will die. We use the same rationale that night. We serviced one bad guy that walked through the perimeter. His buddy came right behind him. We serviced him, walking right down the middle of the street. And then one of our subunit leaders over there, a sergeant major, says, I don't think he had a gun. And you're looking at your radio going, no shit. I said, what do you think this is happening at this point? They sent the next wave in. Well, they had guys. I had to watch him because he was very talented. Guy broke a corner, took his weapon, he shot around the corner towards the CP. He was trying to recon by fire to get people to shoot back at him. We just watched him. Another time during the night, from the north side, 4 to 6, 7 people came down that street. My guys in the other position, they hit them and led in with a 203 40 millimeter HE grenade, high explosive grenade, and then worked from the outside edges in. They left 3 of them by that old green Fiat there, and bodies on the ground. But what would happen is the little birds were hitting the bigger groups on the periphery. The smaller groups we were taking care of, and we just solved problems all night that way. We try to do. If we hit somebody, we let everybody know, hey, that was us. They're down. They're good. The problem is we try to do it ahead of time because everybody was on edge right there. Because if we got overrun, they're right into the back door of another team. So what we want to do is make sure, hey, I got 4 guys coming in from the north. We're getting ready to hit them. Roger. And we'd hit them. All right, I got 2 down. The rest are crawling away. Roger. Just that will let people know everything's good. But if a gunfire erupted, you're worried about guys getting masked and a bunch of people overrunning them, which means you got to look the other direction now to make sure they're not coming in your back door. That was something that was unsettling. Now during the night, we tried calling for fire support. Another chain of command issue. We practice with it all the time. What ended up happening is with the fire support, we marked all our positions with our strobes. You don't throw the strobe on the bad guys like in the movie. That's kind of hokey. What you do is you mark your position with a strobe and you say kill everything outside this. What we normally do is call across to the command posts, and they would call up fire support, and they would tell the helicopters to go shoot things. The problem with it, they were layering it. They're saying we don't know where everybody's at. Well, we do. We're getting shot from that building 2 blocks to the north of palm trees. And it got old, so we just turn our radio freaks right to the pilots, talk to them, say, hey, 2 blocks north, left-hand side. We got palm trees by the house, hit it. And they come in and service that target with rockets or minigun, whatever we call for it. We go, okay, good, hit it again. Boom. And that would solve problems. But there was a problem in the chain of command layering the fire support because they didn't know where everybody was. They're trying to control it on a black and white TV screen and a bird. It doesn't work. We figured this out in Vietnam. It doesn't work. So, again, why they go back to the same model, you got to trust me on the street. You put me out there with guns, I'm eyes, I'm not going to call for fire on something that I don't know that is bad. But when I keep getting shot at from a position, you need to trust me that you train me, arm me, and I'll go in there and solve problems for you. But I need that fire support. So the pilots, again, phenomenal jobs, very accurate pinpoint, incredible stuff. They would hit targets so close that the brass would actually be following us, kind of like the movie. We did have a resupply in the middle of the night. Good points, bad points. I don't know who got a lot of the stuff, but the Black Hawk came in over the CP, the command post, and hovered for about 45 seconds to a minute. The problem is 100 AKs opened up from all over the area shooting at this bird. The miniguns on the bird were shooting the whole time that they were hovering, and they hovered too long. They should have just kicked the bundles and gone. When they hovered, that bird just got shot to pieces. When I say it got shot, guys in the bird got hit. The bird ended up crippling off, moving off, but I was worried about that bird pancaking in right on the command post. They should have kicked bundle and go. Instead, they hovered, minigun shot. We couldn't do anything. It's a 140-mile-an-hour sandstorm there. All I can do is get in the corner up against my weapon system, pin it, and not let it get dirty, because this is my life support system. So I've got to wait. I can't see anything because it's, again, the sand, the wind. Once they pull off, then I can go back, I can hear, I can look. The noise, I used to wear 2 earplugs. I pull one out at night. Why? If I went into a situation where my ears were ringing, and it might last 2 or 3 days, I couldn't pull an earplug out at night because they're ringing. I couldn't hear the bad guys coming. So what I would do is go in with earplugs. Same thing with the bird. If I know it's coming, I might shove an earplug back in, cover my weapon, protect it, and then come back out, pull the earplug, and go back to gun. But the longer they loiter, they didn't know where all the bad guys were, but bad guys can find a bird, and they just shot that bird to pieces. So another bird got crippled up there. But I appreciate the resupply and the pilots flying it, but they should have just dumped and gone. A couple of those memorable instances during the battle, during the night. I had one of my guys had a little Instamatic camera. Didn't know about one of those portables you get from Walmart. And he was taking pictures, but it had automatic flash. So what happens is he'd come out, take a picture, they shoot at him. Go the other direction, they shoot at him. And if I'd known that, I'd shoot his ass out at the time. But he got some great pictures. One other incident, we had a low bid, on a IR cover for a light. Guy had a strobe light on his helmet, IR cover. IR cover was see-through. You could see the dull flash through it. He didn't know it. You come out, be looking, somebody shoot at his head. He go, what the heck? Look. They shoot at him. Finally, he took his helmet off, looked at it, and it must have been low bid on the IR cover, infrared cover for the strobe, because you could see the actual dull flash in there. So he was just putting out his melon with a marker on it. So he pulled that off and fixed it. During the night, we got another picture of an RPG hit our building. He took a picture from the inside of the room, but we took fire like that just so. One of those rounds, actually, shrapnel came off, nicked one of my guys. As far as injuries go on the team, dehydration, then I had a guy, one of my guys, knee injury, surgery afterwards, tore something, ACL or something during the exfil. As far as what I think about the convoy not getting to us, I thought we were going to get overrun. That was my personal, I didn't know the overall situation. I knew what I could see, what I could control with my team. And then basically I was in the thought process of stacking mags and going through my mind of, okay, I'm going to go through my rifle, go through my shotgun, go through my pistol, knife if I have to, grenades, pick up an enemy weapon, stay in the fight. And I'm kind of go over in that in my mind of looking, they can come from here, they can come from there. Here's my 2 areas I got to look at the whole time. The problem is I was in a position, good or bad, that I could only see about 25 yards either way. But that was a position I was directed to secure, and that's what I did. Get overrun, not make it, it's a relative term. You can get overrun and still make it. You just got to kill everybody. The issue is the amount of people they had available, the assets. Found out later there were people would get on vehicles all over the city, get on these vehicles, they'd mass at an intersection, 40 or 50 of them would come to try and hit you. Well, the little birds would take them out 2 or 3 blocks away. If we didn't have the little birds taking those guys out, then we would have had 40 or 50 guys that we'd be dealing with at one time, which would have been a problem. Because again, we talked a little bit about the 5.56 ineffectiveness. You got to break a spine, hit a bone for that bullet to really do its job. We're down, I think at that point, I was down to 1 fragmentation grenade. Unless they started stripping other soldiers, the people that weren't fighting, or the dead or wounded of their ammunition. So I'd actually gotten to a point where I just kind of looking and saying, okay, this is it. Let's draw this line in the sand. Anybody crosses that line, they die. And that's about as simple as it was. And then we just held that line until the next morning when the convoy did make it in. we started getting the word on the convoy, the actual relief convoy coming in. We didn't know who was coming, where they're coming from. Turns out we had one of our personnel was walking point for this armored column. Lieutenant Colonel, good man. When we heard that over the radio, it was kind of like a sigh of relief, because we know somebody from our element, if they decide to push through, they're going to get in. You don't know about conventional Army forces. They had got the Malaysians together, driving the vehicles. They'd filled the vehicles with 10th Mountain troops, and then they started walking this convoy into us to do a link-up. Very dangerous situation, especially at night, because if you get enemy between you and the convoy's got lots of big guns. They can bleed over into you. They can induce casualties and things like that. What we end up doing is I throwing strobes away from my building so they can link up IR strobes. And so what ends up happening is they bring this package in. It's just getting light. And so now we've got a whole nother element we've never worked with before deploying on our site. You know where anything's at, where the threats are. So we've got guys that are moving up different positions. They're repositioning vehicles. We're trying to get guys off the street. I got soldiers from 10th Mountain. They're lined up like ducks outside our position. We took fire from. The guy got killed the other day. So we're pulling them into rooms and, hey, stay off the streets. And one of their commanders ran from his armored vehicle, screamed at another armored vehicle, "You work for me, you don't work for them." Ran back to his vehicle, locked himself in. That was his extent of leadership on the site. I was more scared of the conventional forces right there than were the Somalis. Believe we had a couple of fratricide instances at that point where friendlies were shot friendlies. Problem with the armored vehicles were they were full of troops, so there was no place for us to go. So what we did is we put our dead on top. They can't be killed again. Put our wounded inside, and then we prepared to exfil. What was happening is we had to get the pilots' bodies out of the wreckage. So we had to bring in vehicles, quickie saws to get the pilot. We weren't going to leave without them. It's just an unwritten code there. The only order I got for movement was follow the armored vehicles back to National. And generally that wasn't didn't know where National was, but I can follow an armored vehicle. So got my guys together. At that point, I've got one in there. I took the medic under my wing, and we started moving as a package back to National. And what we do is we fire maneuver, just like we went to the site, fire maneuver out, back through the same area, back past the target building, back down in front of the Olympic Hotel, back to where the Humvees. What they did is they left armor back at National. They left the Humvees back at National. They brought the hard armor into us. So we're firing a maneuver in between these vehicles, and vehicles are bullet magnets. And what happens is they're big things that are easy to shoot at. Malaysians appreciate what they did. They were great guys. They were scared to death. Came by the target building, an RPG came from the target building, blew up on one of our teams about half a block ahead. Ruptured one of the medic's eardrums, a little cut. They kept trucking. I went up to the armored vehicle, I'm beating on the glass. I'm saying, shoot the target building, shoot the target building. The driver was so scared he wouldn't look at me. He just focused ahead. I'm going, oh, this ain't going to be good. So we went down, made a left-hand turn, got on that same street past the target building, and we were firing maneuvering now. These vehicles had twin Mag 58s, and they had grenade launchers on them. They waited till we got into this built-up area, and what they're doing now is they're shooting 10 to 12 feet above your head, just spraying ammo. And you're going, oh, this ain't good. And what happens, you see tracers spinning like that, you're going, oh, this is going to hurt. And, good attempt, a little bit late. And so we get back to National, and there's all the Humvees, and they're lined up. So what we do is I take my guys, I get in a Humvee. In the Humvee, this lightly armored vehicle, got a gunner, a driver, and a TC, a guy that tells them what to do. We get in there like gypsies. They've got water in there, and they got magazines. We start passing out both. We're drinking water, flushing, getting our systems back up, and we're putting mags in our gun. We got the word to move, and we start moving this formation, which we never had driven in before. So what happens is I tell the TC, the track commander is what it's called. I said, don't stop in an intersection. Intersection, you get shot at 4 different directions. I said, keep the vehicle close to a building if we got to stop. That way the bad guys have to come out to shoot at us, and we'll tune them up. So as we started moving, we finally got going, and we started rolling. We're shooting everything that walked, talked, crawled, moved, went. We're putting bullets, keeping everybody down, suppressed. We have still been taking fire this whole time, fire maneuvering out. Not a lot of heavy fire, but we took fire. What happens is he stops, first intersection, he stops in, I crack him in the back of the head, back it up. He backs it up, backs up another vehicle. I said, don't worry about that, the motor pool can fix it. And what happens is, for some reason, the convoy got split. Half went to Packy Stadium, And then, as the movie portrays, we actually went with, I don't know, 3-4 vehicles to a place called Newport. Went into this spot, and a Black Hawk came and picked us up. But during this, we're crossing a no man's land. It's like Mad Max, and all of a sudden we cross a green line into another tribal area. What happens in this green line, there's people there, umbrellas, waiting for the bus and stuff like that. I got guys throwing flashbangs at them, and I got to go, ceasefire, another tribe. Let's not piss them off. You know, not everybody hates us in this world. And so we go weapons tight, and we launch back to Newport. We'll get accountability of our folks. Black Hawk comes in, picks us up. We go back to base. A lot of folks don't understand the concept of not leaving a fallen comrade, whether it be he alive or dead. We just don't do that. We work with the task force people so long, the pilots. If I know if I called them, they'd come to get me. No matter what shitstorm they had to fly through to get to me, they would do it. They'd be there. So we owe them that much respect. Somalis have a disregard for human life, and they have and also desecrating Americans, as you saw in the video. Americans drug in the streets. We weren't going to let that happen. So would I kill people to get our bodies back? You bet. Would I stay on site? That's what we did. We stayed there and held the site until we had the tools and the equipment to get the pilots' bodies out. Another issue in the movie that they had the tactical vehicle with the recoilless rifle that was shooting at the different positions. Never saw any of those. Most of the ground weapons were RPGs, AKs. They had some other foreign weapons. Most of the hits we were taking from explosive devices were RPGs. There were no cannons that we saw. There was no guys running around with MBGs strangling people or taking guys out. They didn't get into our perimeter. We just people asked me, have I ever shot anybody with a pistol? I said no. They never got past my rifle. Different perceptions in the movie of people in the back rooms not posting security. That's totally false. If I would have caught somebody making coffee in that perimeter, in my positions, that would have been, I'd have made short work of them. There was no coffee being made. We stayed on a knee for whatever time it was until that next morning, covering 2 different directions. So no coffee being made that I know of. Had I found that out as a team leader, there'd been some ass kicked. In the movie, different references to the indigenous personnel of Somalia. They called them skinnies. It was a politically correct term. Again, not all of them were skinny. So our actual term was Sammys, after Sammy Davis Jr. Loved the guy, watched all his movies, great American, but that's what we call them, Sammys. That was the actual term we used over there. Sometimes the chain of command gets a little too political, they get a little too sensitive, and again, there's no race or color difference with us. All soldiers bleed the same. It is what it is, but a lot of people like to change it for perceptions or what they think of society will look at them, and it's like, get over it. When we arrived back at the hangar, we started piecing together information as far as what had actually happened, who's still missing, who was dead, who was alive. We didn't know during the battle. I think I was able to pinpoint one of the persons that we put on top of one of the APC's armored vehicles because of the call sign they used. But when we got back, we were able to put the bigger picture together. Another crash Black Hawk, convoy shot up, people missing, and and we actually figured out that Durant's bird was down. We didn't know who was alive, who was dead on it. We had 2 missing personnel, Gordon and Shugart, and that's when we actually found that out back in the rear.
My deepest condolences go to the families and the friends of those brave young Americans.
Clinton called the overall mission a success, while at the same time his defense secretary is looking for ways to get U.S. combat troops home faster.
There's a lot of need for American forces in lots of parts of the world, and we would like not to stay in Somalia, and we certainly are not going to stay more than we're needed.
And even before the latest casualties, many in Congress were saying enough is enough.
What we have now is the ultimate worst case. We have reduced greatly our military power and expanded the mission.
I think we should get out of Somalia. I think we've accomplished our objective.
While we're loading our mags, cleaning our weapons, getting ready for the next fight, you always assume that there is another mission to go back out, that your people are alive. Even though they may be dead, you assume that they're alive and you prepare for that battle. If you don't, when the call comes, you won't be ready. So we wanted to be ready. So one of the biggest compliments during that whole operation is I had a Vietnam vet out of the task force guys that saw us come back, upload weapons, magazines, clean our guns, get right back in the game, ready to go back out. He was impressed with that. He said, man, after that much time in a firefight, and to get back in, that was a good thing. So I just kind of mentally noted that. That was a compliment in my book, a feather in the cap. And that was our training and work ethic that we had prided ourselves on over the years. We had a new group come in within about 24 hours, and then what we did is we put the Rangers, airfield security, and we took the blocking positions, our group, and then we took the new group coming in for the target if we had to go out back again. Durant was still out there. We didn't know about our two snipers, Randy and Gordy. So what we were prepared to do was go back out and secure them if we would have found them. After we returned back to the base, we were uploaded, started resting. I think several things happened. I can't pinpoint this. Now, I believe at that point, the president, we were watching the bodies being drugged in the hangar on CNN. And it was happening out there live on the street. One of the disheartening things is they wouldn't let us go get them. It would be simple to come in, minigun the whole crowd, and then come in, recover our bodies already dead, and then teach those people that you don't do that to American soldiers. Our command didn't have the guts to do it, or I believe it even got even higher than that, where the president probably called down and got to the point and said, hey, no one else is going to launch off that base. What happened is the State Department got involved, and you bring in Robert Oakley, the ambassador, and they start negotiations. The actual Somalis called the ceasefire. We didn't call the ceasefire. Some pilots went down there to the ceasefire talks, and the Somalis said, we called the ceasefire because you killed so many of us that day. And I don't know who those evil men are in the hangar referring to us. And that was a good thing. That was a compliment. But the problem is now you got state involved. State and military at that time didn't play well together. But they diffused the issues there using State Department negotiations. They got Durant returned. They've got the bodies returned, Randy and Gary, and then diffuse all the issues politically and basically let it melt away.
عبدالله ماشي أريد كفر جدي شو مجد إلا نبتي
Reference the after action for this battle. What happened is we got back, we uploaded, started adjusting our gear, getting ready to go back out. You're dead tired, fatigued, multiple adrenaline dumps during this combat incident. So we get back on the 4th, we rest on the 5th, and we go to have an after action, a debrief, after action review of the incident. So we start this debrief, we're all in there. special ops folks, the Rangers, and a Ranger lieutenant gets up and says, starts off, yes, sir, we were suppressing enemy on the target building. I got to stop the debrief right there. I said, Lieutenant, there was no enemy up there. It was us you're shooting at. So what happens is the briefing stopped. Everybody ran, got cameras, started looking at overhead video footage, and just like, hell. And so what ended up happening is Captain Steele did a apology to me about one of his guys shooting at him. He said, oh yeah, he's being sent back, but this is after the fact. They should have been fixed ahead of time. If he used the proper military training, the guy wouldn't have turned around and launched rounds. And so I just took the apology for what it was, walked away. That night, what happened is, since the debriefing stopped, probably we were going to do it the next day, but that night, the command group was out there talking outside the hangar. What ends up happening, I go to the latrines, which are on the other side of them, come back. As soon as my butt hits the cot, a mortar round, 160 mil mortar comes right in the middle of that group. It hits the unit commander, squadron commander, the unit doc, kills Matt Rierson, injures other folks, and what happens is it changes the whole face of the operation now. So we never had an after action in country. We actually had to come back to the United States, and best of my knowledge, we weren't going to have an after action. I think they were going to, my belief was that they were going to attempt to sweep it underneath the carpet and push out awards, get the brief statements down, and everybody was running for cover. And so that's the problem when you get up certain officer ranks and they get political. They, instead of doing the right thing and having a good, honest after action, they hid. We had to actually push them to do an after action back in country. And when we finally pushed them to that after action, to a certain extent, they pulled rank. Didn't answer some of the tough questions. And it was one of those things that it's unacceptable. And what ends up happening is I can't take a team into harm's way knowing that my chain of command is not going to support me in all facets of the operation. So at that point, I basically made up my mind that I was going to leave special operations. And what I did is I went to the training section of the unit for 2 years, postured, and went back to regular Army. I did 4 years ROTC, gave back to the big Army, helped commission about 60 lieutenants out of our ROTC program. Then I retired from there. Positive points that came out of this incident, I think we can attribute to it, is staying out of different ground wars around the world. Last I checked, there's around 240 countries in the world that we deal with. For a long time, Africa was a hot spot. I think Rwanda, they killed 800,000 people with machetes there. We can put people anywhere. The problem is we have to kill people to keep them there. So sometimes you got to make the peace before you keep the peace. So we'll never know how many conflicts it kept us out of in that time. The other thing is it made commanders, politicians rethink when they deploy American forces overseas, what is the end game? Okay? We're not going to roll over and die as a unit. If you put us in a bad spot, we're going to fight. We don't surrender. Randy and Gordy basically proved that. They fought to the death. We'll do the same thing. You have to understand the end game and what you're trying to get out of it. That means the commands, before they want to go overseas, have to have an end goal. Why are we going there? What are we going to do? How long are we going to stay? And it developed a checklist from my understanding that before commanders can deploy units overseas to do potential combat actions, that they have to have reasons. There's got to be a need, which I think is very important. You can't have the military executing combat actions on their own without an end state, without a coordinated effort towards that country. As far as downed aircraft scenario, we knew it was coming sooner or later. We'd practiced it a week prior. We knew that eventually if we slow these birds down enough to use them as an air cap, they're vulnerable to ground fire, both AKs, RPGs, RPK machine guns. So we practiced it. We knew it was coming. We had the contingencies down. We knew everything about the aircraft, how to get the pilots out, their bodies, zero crypto, whatever we needed to do to destroy that bird, cut off fuel. We crashed a bird back during rehearsals at Fort Bragg. Bird crashed. We had roped up on it. Actually, bubble had cracked off. The blades had broken off. It was like a big blender. And one of the guys had been a crew chief, one of our guys, on a Black Hawk before, and he knew to smother the engine, took a fire extinguisher, shoved it in the air intake, smothered the engine. We would have known how to shut it down. We ended up taking another bird, put it in the slot, but we had to know about all the aircraft and the different contingencies with that aircraft. Again, it was part of our package. So we had to be, again, the bird, we knew it was going to go down. We didn't know when, so we planned for it. We put it into our contingency plan. We had certain actions that if the pilot got shot down, they knew what to do to link up with us, and we actually had bags in the bird with extra gear if we needed them. So we worked very closely with them. The pilots were, again, our guys were exceptional. The Vietnam vets, one of them, we had Big Bob, Little Bob, and one of them was called Flapper. Flapper had time in Vietnam where his thumb had been shot off, so his flight glove would flap in the breeze when he would fly. It was classic. But these were exceptional guys, and we'd go to the ends of the earth for them. So it's one of those things. We developed that relationship through all the rehearsals, back home, in country, and the combat missions. Mutual respect there. A lot of people have asked me about the use of Rangers versus SF, Special Forces. There's two schools of thought. Rangers is a 19 to 21 mean age group as far as a person seasoned in the military. Special Forces in the day was probably, again, 25 to 30 mean age. So what you do is have a different level of experience, depth of experience, combat experience, real world experience. And I think anyone can be trained, but the problem is the training and the leadership. There were some issues with the leadership, but as far as they can both do the job, both can be used. And again, if it were to be a problem again, we saw some issues, then they could go the other route, use Special Forces. They should all be able to interchange and interop. But again, a lot of times you're handed a company commander who you've got to work with, and he's either going to be good or bad. As far as leadership goes, what you can do is you can have a strong company commander, strong first sergeant, it'll work. You can have a weak first sergeant, strong company commander, it'll work. When you have a strong first sergeant, weak company commander, you can get away with it. But when you have two weak leaders, and say a company-sized element, you're going to have problems. And so I think that's what we had that day. Is one of those things that we worked together almost 2 months to include combat operations prior to that date, and there were some issues that arose. Again, I'm a little bit more mellow now as far as my assessment. At the time, I was very frustrated. We could see it coming. We knew there were going to be issues with the organizational structure of the Rangers. Generally, a lieutenant is not he's 2 to 3 years in service. And what ends up happening is when you put him in charge of a battle position of 15 soldiers, you change the structure of the military. Generally, what you have is a squad, and you have fire team leaders. Fire team leaders' span of control goes to 5 people. And so you should have 1 supervisor for 5 people in combat. And then from there, you should have 3 of those fire team leaders at least. And what you do is you push a platoon sergeant aside. Well, a platoon sergeant's got 12 to 14 years experience, and you put a guy that's got 2 to 3 years experience. This combat is not for on-the-job training. Do it when you have to, but for the most part, have the people in there, get them seasoned. If you need to, attach the platoon sergeant, put them right in the hip pocket of the lieutenant. The lieutenant can either be good or bad. And what happens is when you do that, one lieutenant trying to control 15 individual soldiers can't do it. There's too many things going on. Think about 3 different streets, 3 different sets of soldiers are looking down all at the same time with 3 different actions happening. One man can't control that. The people that control it are the fire team leaders, and that's the way the military does it or did do it. It's a very effective program. So they kind of changed that structure for this mission. Had they kept the original structure, I think it would have been helpful, because that's the way we train, that's the way we fight. But when you change it for a mission, and then that person there does not have the depth of experience, you push the depth of experience out, which is platoon sergeants and the people that have been there, you're going to have problems. Rangers, great soldiers. Rangers is actually a profession, and I'll get into that a little bit. There's a lot of people that go to Ranger school, and they come back to their unit, infantry units. And then, so what you have is Rangers, and I call tab wearers. I was a tab wearer. I was an infantryman my whole career. I went to Ranger school from an infantry unit, came back to that unit, that's where I served. So I was not a Ranger, I was a tab wearer is what I call it. The people that go to Ranger Battalion and live there, stay there, those are Rangers. It's a profession, it's a lifestyle on its own. Problem is with the Army, a lot of times they'll take people that have that tab that never served in a Ranger regiment or element, and what they'll do is they'll send them there in a higher leadership position to get them promoted. They'll get that good 2-year block that he served there, and what it'll help is them get him promoted down the road. Well, the problem is when you take somebody that doesn't have that same ethic, the SOPs down, the history, how they operate, and you interject him for 2 years, he's actually lowering the standard of that unit. It's a ticket puncher is what it is. And so that's unacceptable. Rangers need to be kept pure, and then that way their system will work more efficiently. When you start disrupting the system with outside influences like that, you lower the combat effectiveness of that unit. Basically, the event was over. One of the biggest events since Vietnam. Everybody ran for cover. Instead of trying to get the truth out, documenting it, so people don't make the same mistakes, they were worried about their political careers, and that's unacceptable. When you have Mark Bowden, a phenomenal journalist, have to put the battle together of what actually happened, and he's briefing military at some points, whereas we didn't even get the story internally. We didn't fix it internally. That's unacceptable, especially at that unit. Honor, integrity, and candor had been there at the forefront or preached, but when times got tough, people folded back and tried to protect their careers, and that's unacceptable. Hard questions were asked, they weren't answered. As far as special ops, when I left the unit, I closed the door on the unit. I had no intent of talking to special ops again. It was my intent to quietly retire out of the military. What ended up happening, how I was contacted by Mark Bowden, is I found out later that the unit doc told Mark Bowden about me, and evidently he probably had an interest or wanted the story told, make sure it was told the right way. If it had been told from one perspective, it would have been a Ranger slant, and it would have been, I guess you would say, be skewed. And what we want to do is we want to make sure we tell the reality of combat so people understand it. How special ops has changed, I don't know. Close the door on it. And that's one of those things I've kind of regret. I knew when I talked to Mark Bowden, Big Army said I could. You didn't prefer for me to talk. Last I checked, the unit works for Big Army. The issues that I have is we've got to fix this stuff. And again, if we don't, then more soldiers are going to die in the future. So hopefully special ops has learned lessons from this, but you don't know. I closed the door on them. When I talked to Mark Bowden, I didn't want anybody in contact with me because I didn't want them, anybody thinking they're going to get painted with the same brush. So it was one of those things, I just closed the doors, and this was, made my decision to talk to Mark Bowden, get the story out. I try to get it as accurately as possible. So you have politics at all levels, and that's the problem. The special ops has their own historians. The issue is those historians will talk to select people that are in favor with the chain of command sometimes, because a historian works for the commander. And so sometimes a story gets told a certain way, not the right way. They don't get all the accounts. And so what happens is they can select sometimes how the story is told also. Mark Bowden wrote Black Hawk Down, one of the best books I've ever read on the subject. Took the incidents, fresh in the guys' minds, he cross-checked all the data, put it in a great comprehensive package. The problem what you get is when people owe allegiance to like the commander, and it may skew their view. And so you've got a movie view because the Army says, we're going to give you helicopters, all this. We want the story told a certain way. Well, the movie, if you've never seen a Black Hawk in a movie, you saw him here. Little Birds in a movie, you saw him here. So at one point, the movie industry had an influence from the Army. Well, who else? Well, they've got actors say, I want a more meatier part. Even though this guy didn't do this, I want my role a little bit meatier. Well, now he embellishes. And so you've got egos involved. And then they don't want to say what really happened. You've got to be able to tell a story and say, yep, these are the hard calls, this is the way it happened. When you lose that ability, especially in the unit, you lose trust. And you've got guys in there that, again, I talk about being a profession and having a passion for that. And you've got to keep that, and that rule has got to apply both for the NCOs and the officer corps. You can't have the officer corps talking out one side of their mouth and doing something else. If you're gonna, you got to live that standard. If you live the example, nobody can argue with you. It's essentially correct that the battle wasn't really chronicled until Mark Bowden's book. That was the only real after action. I learned things in the book I never knew, and in talking to Mark Bowden. I think that it also, though, kept us out of a lot of potential conflicts that were no-win situations. So there's a lot of good things that came out of this if it was taken in the proper context. I think there's a checklist now before we go do anything overseas, which is good. Military commanders need that. They need a certain right and left boundary, especially when they're dealing with soldiers' lives. Unless there's an end game, shouldn't be going. And so with that, Mark Bowden did come in, put it together, But it kind of sent a message to everybody, and that's one of those good pieces of history that I recommend for all leaders is reading the book, because whether you're a military leader or civilian leader, understand the problems and the ramifications with no end game. I have not kept in touch. When I talked to Mark Bowden, I deliberately closed all contact with anybody in the unit because I didn't want to get painted, or anybody knowing me painted with that brush, and I have a regret for doing that. But every time they're still my friends, battle buddies, good guys, you know, and I'd go to war with them in a heartbeat. But because of I made a decision to talk about this, which is a no-no. I said I don't want anybody else to get painted with it or implicated, and so I did. But the guys are out there, and if they were to me phenomenal guys back then, and they don't really change. The mold was cast when I knew them. So. Discrimination and I guess you say combat mindset can also be rolled or talked to in this video, and what that refers to. You've got to remember, back in that day, the major threat was the Soviet Union. The wall was getting ready to come down. So what soldiers have been trained to do is fight other soldiers, people in uniforms. Now we have a civilian populace that wear civilian clothes, men, women. They come to the fight. They at one point, they would wrap their AKs, they cut the stocks off, wrap their AKs in a towel. We'd have to be able to ID that it was a AK by either the pistol grip or front sight post. So if you couldn't do that, they weren't a threat. With that, they tried to play as many rules against us, knowing our philosophies, culture, religion, as possible to get as close to us, lure us in. But at 3-4 October kind of broke the back. We crossed the line. We said, okay, you all want to play, we'll play. Now, with that, the soldiers were trained. We talk about combat mindset, shoot other soldiers. Now you got women, bringing an apron to the fight. What's in the apron? Grenades, RPGs, magazines. She becomes part of a crew serve weapon. The other thing you need to think about is if there's a woman pointing at your position for a guy shooting between her legs or directing fire from another position, she's part of a crew serve weapon. And as far as I'm concerned, she could be a gauge. Now, people have a hard time doing that. Remember, you got to think about mindset. Soldiers that haven't been to combat before, a lot of the Rangers, 17-21, mean age group. There's no issues with that, but we've got to address that ahead of time in what they call ROE, rules of engagement. And everybody's got to be under that understanding. And you've got to also go back to combat mindset, the other video, and talk about you've got to be willing to take a life to save a life. And so you've got to put that in the forefront, and you've got to come to terms with, peace with it beforehand, with God, all that before you go out there. And so that's the big leadership hurdle, the combat mindset hurdle that people had to overcome. Young soldiers, older soldiers, the SF mentality of being surgical and then winning the hearts and minds. And so we had folks across the spectrum that had issues with that. But today, it's probably the norm. If you look at Iraq, Afghanistan, people are wearing civilian clothes. They're blowing you up in civilian clothes. So it's more the norm today, but that kind of turned the tide back then as far as people in civilian clothes, discrimination, rules of engagement. And I'll just add one point is you can touch on the fact that if a woman is bringing grenades or an RPG, or a kid is bringing extra ammunition to a fighter, they're part of that crew serve weapon. You've got to make as long as you can live with it, look yourself in the mirror, then you can engage them. But again, you should come to that point ahead of time. Again, that weapon that he brings to that fighter, if it kills your buddy, that's mission failure to me. So if they're coming to a fight, they're wrong. Simple as this. They know where the fight is. They know where the fight isn't. They should be going the opposite direction. They want to come. They want to play. People ask me about Somalia today. Well, I don't see much difference. Actually, they've become more brazen. They've got the pirates out there, and they've captured people, captured ships. They've got hostages. The place is still a backwater cesspool. Unless we have a strategic economic interest in there, again, there's no reason to go back. What happens is you get bleeding hearts that want to say, hey, we need to go fix that country. Unless they're willing to put their son or daughter on the line to go do it, to pull security, They're not serious about it. A lot of times the bleeding hearts want us to go in there and make the peace, keep the peace, but they're not willing to sacrifice their children to do it. If they're not willing to sacrifice their children, that's not a viable mission. So they talk a good game, but internally they're cowards. And again, they want all this, but they're not willing to make it happen. So when you're ready to put your son or daughter on the line, then you're serious about that mission. So other than that, Somalia, it is what it is. The pirates make good shark bait, simple as it is. And so we should churn the water more with their bodies, and then that'll send a message. When the boats go out, they don't come back home, they'll stop doing that stuff. To conclude this interview, to sum up what we talked about is Special Ops, from my understanding, has grown incredibly since my day. If I had a word of advice to send to them is keep your honesty, integrity, your candor. Don't let people lose that. Again, this is my perspective of what happened that day. Not the chain of command, not Rangers, anyone else. This is what I saw, what I lived. I've remembered it very clear the whole time. In the end game, I'm not doing this DVD to make money. What I want to do is make sure we inform future generations. Who do we need to inform? Well, we need to inform politicians. If you're going to run this country, you need to understand the military's capabilities, missions, make sure we have an end game. Senior officers and leaders, you understand the role you have and to take care of your troops. You need to look down before you look up. Don't worry about getting promoted. If you got good soldiers, they'll get you promoted. Senior NCOs, again, take care of your soldiers. Make sure they're trained to the best level, as close to the edges as you can for combat, because again, their life depends on it. Subunit leaders, same thing. Train your guys, make them work their battle skills, make sure they're realistic, as close to the edge as possible. Individuals, don't be late, don't be light, which means bring all your gear, be prepared. The better shape you're in, again, work your medical. All those little technical and tactical things, be the best you can. Again, you're going to see other battles in the future. This is not just a one-time deal. We've got to get smart. We try not to make the same mistake. Sometimes we do. When you find yourself in a fight, fight. But again, keep the politics out of it. Bring our soldiers home. That's what it's all about. The most valuable commodity we have right now is a volunteer fighting force for the United States that we don't have to conscript and force to fight. These are people that want to be there, do the right things. Don't lose that trust, that sacred trust there. Bring them home as best you can.
Boy to the war is gone. In the ranks of death you'll find him. His father's sword he has girded on, and his wild heart slung behind him. Land of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betrays thee, one sword at least thy rights shall guard, one faithful heart shall praise thee. Fell, but the foeman's chain could not bring his proud soul under. The harp he loved ne'er spoke again, for he tore its chords asunder.